This is Pokemon Reunion, a dimension-hopping, time-traveling, multiversal adventure starring everybody's favorite silent protagonist. I've been wanting to play Pokemon Reunion for a while, but I also heard that it was basically impossible to Nuzlocke. So that handful of you that keep on asking me not to do Nuzlocks and to do normal videos, well, I guess this one's for you because this is not a hardcore Nuzlocke. Which means if a Pokemon faints, I can revive it. There is no level cap. I can jam as many candies as I want in these things' mouths. I can switch whenever I feel like it, but I'm still going to play on set mode to make it a little bit harder. And I'm going to be popping so many revives, you won't even know when I'm going to stop. I am just around 20,000 subscribers as this video is coming out, and I really want to make it over that hurdle. So if this isn't your first time here, you enjoy the video, the sound of my voice, or the dumb jokes I make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you could maybe leave a like down below and maybe a comment, that would also be super cool as well. But without further ado, let's make our way through this timey-wimey adventure of Pokemon Reunion. The game opens up at a press conference where a scientist named Everett is talking about multiversal theory. Because what if every time we made a decision, a different multiverse branched off where you made the opposite decision? With the number of infinite possibilities, that also means that there's the potential for infinite knowledge. And that is what Everett is seeking. But one guy asked the most important question. If there are multiverses, are there Pokemon in them? And since this game exists, I think you know the answer to that question. And one final reporter gets a question in asking if Everett has discovered a new energy source. And he promises he'll get there. And he'll bring endless knowledge to this world. And we wake up in Red's room after his training at Mount Silver, and not only that, we have his team that he battles Gold with at the top of Mount Silver, with all of their perfect IVs. It's a Wii, one of the best consoles of its generation, better than the Nintendo Switch. Really? But of course our work is never done even though we just got back from Mount Silver. Professor Oak wants to see us, so I guess we better stop by the lab. And I absolutely love the tile work in this game. Look at all of this. Stopping by Professor Oak's lab, he goes ahead and updates our Pokedex to the Pokedex 2.0. He knows that after our journey through Kanto and Johto, nothing is a secret to him in those regions anymore, but there's some other Pokemon in other places if maybe we want to go look at them for him. And dude, could you give it a rest? I literally just got home. He then lets us know that maybe we should stop by Viridian City and say hi to Blue while we're here at home. So I guess I'm on my way to Viridian City.
Some creep stole my rare Pokemon. It was shiny. I want it back. It wasn't just any old thing either. A Clefairy. You're gonna do something, aren't you? I'll wait here anyways. I want it back. It took me so long to find it. It's my rarest Pokemon. It took over 20 hours. I haven't even slept yet. Can you imagine?
Yeah, well, nobody's asking you to spend over 20 hours looking for a Pokemon. But either way, I'll keep you posted.
I absolutely love this dunk on shiny hunters. Dorks. Just kidding, play however you want to play, but it is absolutely hilarious. Over on Route 2, we run into this time cop looking guy. He lets us know that he just got beaten up by the league champion, and I'm pretty sure that's us. Did we beat you up? And after touching the portal next to where that time cop kid was, we are transported into the original Red and Blue Pokemon League, where we find Rando at the back of the champion chamber doing something silly. And I guess now it's going to be time for us to take on Blue for the Pokemon League Championship. He starts off with Pidgeot, and we send in Blastoise. And I love that it's the Gen 1 Pidgeots as this thing starts to go for a Sky Attack. But once we hit it with an Ice Beam, we can do about 60%. It fires off the Sky Attack, doing about half, and one more Ice Beam then takes it down. Rhydon comes in next, and I absolutely adore this, but a Times Force Scald is more than enough to take out the Rhydon. Up next comes Arcanine, who's going to intimidate us, but I will not be intimidated by Arcanines. It goes for a Flamethrower, doing barely anything, so a Scald's going to take it down pretty low. He's then going to swap out, setting in Exeggutor instead, as we go for another Scald, doing barely anything, but we do get the burn off. So we're going to slap Blastoise out, setting in Charizard, and the Exeggutor goes for a Stomp. After stomping us again, we're going to go for an Air Slash and grab the KO. Alakazam's up next, and it's going to go for a Psybeam, getting me down pretty low, but we go for a Flare Blitz, getting it down super low as well. And we're going to swap out, setting in Snorlax, as the Alakazam is going to go for another Psybeam. And once we get hit again, we can take it out with a Crunch. Arcanine's gonna come back in, getting another Intimidate off on us, but I'm gonna go for an Earthquake after getting Flamethrowered for barely any damage. Finally, his Ace Blastoise comes in, and it's gonna go for a Blizzard, which we can tank, but I do get frozen, unfortunately. Which means we're gonna swap out, this time sending in Venusaur, as it's gonna go for a Bite this time. And I'm really risking it by sending it into a Blizzard, but guess what, buddy? This Venusaur's got Giga Drain, and I'm gonna do about 50%, healing back up to a healthy amount. And why is this thing hitting 3 Blizzards in a row on me? But we take it out with another Giga Drain, and we defeat Blue to become the Pokemon League champion again. After defeating Blue, we're gonna talk to this Time Cop again, because I am now the 2-time Kanto champion. He lets us know he's going to give us the beating of a lifetime, but then remembers he forgot his Pokemon at the Pokemon Center and then runs off. That was weird. Anywho, now we're going to head over to the Viridian City Gym and meet up with the real Blue. We then let him know that we saw an 8-bit version of him over at the Pokemon League like 5 minutes ago. But since we talked about battling 8-bit him, why don't we battle 32-bit him instead? Blue starts off by sending an Exeggutor, and we're going to lead off with Blastoise. We're immediately going to swap out, and we're going to send in Charizard. And that's when the Exeggutor goes for a Leaf Storm, doing barely anything. We're then going to fire off a Fire Blast, and we're going to OHKO the Exeggutor no problem. Next up is going to come his Rhyperior. So we're going to swap out, this time sending Blastoise in. And the Rhyperior is going to go for a Thunder Fang, totally calling it. But we can outspeed, going for a ×4 Scald, grabbing the OHKO. Next in is going to come his Arcanine. And it's going to go for a Crunch, dropping our defense, and we're going to go for a Scald, doing about 60%. So we're going to swap Blastoise out because of the defense drop, this time sending in Charizard, as Blue uses a full restore because he's a jerk. Arcanine goes for an Extreme Speed, and we're going to go for an Air Slash. And I know I can stay in for one more, but he goes for a Thunder Fang, getting me down to just 34 HP, and I flinch. So I guess we're going to swap out, this time sending in Snorlax, as the Arcanine's going to go for another Crunch. And after going for another Crunch, luckily not getting the defense drop, we can go for an Earthquake, getting it down pretty low. And Blue is then going to use another full restore, and I should have done an Earthquake. So we're going to do that after going for a Crunch and getting Thunder Fanged. And after it goes for another Extreme Speed, getting me down into the red, we take out the Arcanine. His Ace Blastoise is going to come in now, and I'm going to swap out, sending in Venusaur, as the Blastoise goes for an Ice Beam, and I probably should have stayed in. It's going to outspeed us again, going for another Ice Beam, bringing me down into the red, but we're going to go for a Giga Drain, getting him down super low. And knowing I should be able to tank one more Ice Beam, we go for another Giga Drain and grab the KO on Blastoise. Blue's going to send him a Champ, and I'm in a super rough spot. I know that I'm not doing a Nuzlocke, but I still don't want to lose any Pokemon here. And Venusaur goes down. But now I can get a safe switch in for Pikachu, go for a Thunderbolt, and get this thing down super low, but it's going to go for a Stone Edge, getting me down pretty low on the first turn. But with one more Thunderbolt, we can take down his Machamp, which is going to lead into his Pidgeot, which I honestly forgot he had. So we're going to go for a Thunderbolt, grab the OHKO, and defeat Blue. And I absolutely love all the dialogue added between the battles. It's something that I really like from the newer Pokemon games, that a lot of fan games and ROM hacks don't really do, except for when they're sending in their final Pokemon. Blue brings up it was refreshing to have a fun and difficult battle, and that's when he gets a call from Professor Oak. Blue lets us know that there's a guy with a title for a name instead of a real name looking for us. His name, Looker, and he's in Cerulean City. So I guess that's our next destination.
Fortunately, I've just been informed about a stolen Clefairy, and as luck would have it, someone matching the description ran off with me. Seems fishy. Never fear.
I'd recently heard of thefts all over the region, but today you're in luck, for I'm here, the great Masquerade. I've come to lend you a hand. Fortunately for you, I possess a far superior method. You think I'm quite talented with magical arts, and thank you for noticing the outfit there, officer. Let me what a true illusionist is capable of. I'm going to give you a little demonstration of my powers. Prepare to be amazed. Abra, Kadabra. Hold on. No, not you, Kadabra. I was just reciting the incantation. You're not the keenest bishop in the shed. Kadabra.
Okay, so I was narrating this like as a joke, but this is absolutely hilarious. Also, is this just N?
All right, Kadabra, I'll give you a chance if you insist. Behold, they teleport your criminal straight to prison.
And he accidentally teleported the police officer.
Halt there, rascal. A wild Pokemon attacked me.
After fighting our way through Viridian Forest and fighting a bunch of random evil grunts, we find this mysterious lady, and it seems as though she may be an administrator for Team Air. She then asks us a very important question, and that's whether or not anybody could become a great Pokemon trainer. And of course we say yes, to which she finds surprising, because to go on a Pokemon journey, you need to be able to afford to leave and not work in the first place. Additionally, losing Pokemon battles means you need to pay things out. Also, all the items that you buy from Pokemart are sold by the Pokemon League. So they're just lining their pockets with all of our cash. But Team Karasu believes that Pokemon should be for everyone. And I guess that means that Red's part of the 1% that they're trying to get rid of. So Raven tells us to check our privilege, and it's time for us to battle her. Raven starts off by sending in Meteor, and we're going to send in Pikachu. On the first turn, we're going to go for a Thunderbolt, and we're going to Oka the Meteor. Next up is going to come Gliscor. So we're going to swap out, and we're going to send in Blastoise. Gliscor's going to go for a Facade for some reason, doing some chip damage to Blastoise. And after that, going for an Ice Fang, we can fire back with a Scald, getting it down pretty low. And then after using a full restore, we can go for another Scald, getting it even lower, as she's going to use her second full restore. Then after a crit Oko, she's going to send us to Raptor as her next Pokemon, going for a Brave Bird, getting us down pretty low, but we can fire off an Ice Beam, getting her down low as well. Knowing I don't really have a good option here, I'm going to stay in, and luckily she swaps out into Talonflame, who we can do about 30% to. And then the Talonflame goes for a Flare Blitz, doing barely anything to us, but we did get burned. So going for a Scald, we can pick up the KO on Talonflame. When Staraptor comes back in, the move here is probably to stay in, so I do, as it goes for a U-turn, grabbing the KO on Blastoise and sending in Corviknight. So we're going to send in Charizard, and we can outspeed, going for a Fire Blast and grabbing the Oko on the Corviknight. This is going to lead back into her Staraptor again, who's going to go for a Double Edge on us, doing some massive damage and KOing itself. And with that, we defeat Raven. And after beating Raven and her burly bird Pokemon, she lets us know, don't think you're finished with Team Karasu. We'll be back soon, because they're fighting for the future of all trainers. Once we get over to Cerulean City, we find this mysterious man who has not a name but a title, and that title is Looker. Looker asks us if we've seen an unusual amount of Pokemon from other regions all coming to Kanto all at the same time, which, given a few of the Pokemon we've run into so far, is 100% accurate. Not only might it be difficult for these Pokemon to survive in an unknown environment, but it's also not good for the local ecosystem as well. And he's looking for our help in investigating this phenomenon, and of course, I agree. He then asks if we'll meet up with him in his office because there's some more things he'd like to talk to us about in private. He then lets us know that the real reason why we've been asked here is completely classified, even to Professor Oak. He says he knows that he can trust us with this information because we're the ones that disbanded Team Rocket all those years ago. He then asks us if we've heard of Parallel Worlds, which, yes, I have, because I played the very beginning of the game already. Looker then lets us know that the sudden appearance of so many different types of Pokemon in Kanto is due to these Parallel Worlds, and not a mass migration. And these Ultra Wormholes are capable of bringing you to different times or places or even timelines. In other words, these portals appear and disappear at random around the Kanto region, causing these Pokemon to appear. That's why you notice there's so many police officers in every town out on patrol. He then lets us know that Lance and the Elite Four have also begun their own investigation parallel to his. The gym leaders have also already been notified, and they're going to be defending their respective cities. He then asks us if we'd be willing to put our life on the line to defend our dimension. And that sounds wicked, so yes. And just like when we accidentally fought 8-Bit Blue, Looker lets us know that once we enter a wormhole, there are set conditions we have to meet in order to close the wormhole. So this game is like 1 part solo leveling, 2 parts Doctor Who, right down to the tall, mysterious man with not a real name wearing a tight suit and a trench coat. He just needs to scream, "Allons-y," and we'll be there. And with that, we've joined the D-Squad with Doctor Who. And our first official D-Squad mission is to investigate a wormhole over by Nugget Bridge. And as long as we don't have to deal with Rando stuffing so many chicken nuggets into his pockets, I think we'll be fine. After crossing Nugget Bridge, we find this ultra wormhole being guarded by the policeman. So let's head inside and see what we can find next. Once we enter the wormhole, we see Aerith looking on. After crossing to the other side, we're in a city I don't quite recognize, but after talking to this old woman, apparently we're in Spikemouth. So we're in Galar. Okay, yep, there he is. After walking through the streets of Spikemouth, we run into Marnie, who apparently has taken her brother's place as Spikemouth's gym leader. And I guess it's time for us to battle against her. Marnie starts off by sending in Leopard, and we're going to send in Pikachu. On the first turn, we're going to outspeed, going for a Thunderbolt, grabbing the Oko. Next up is going to come Toxicroak, and we're going to do the same thing, going for another Thunderbolt and grabbing the Oko. When Scrafty comes in, honestly, I'm just going to keep on trying to Thunderbolt these things, and we're going to do about 60%, as a Drain Punch is going to come in, smacking us down super low because we're a Pikachu. Assuming another Drain Punch, we're going to swap out, sending in Charizard, and it's going to go for a knockoff. So going for an Air Slash, we're going to knock this thing down pretty low, as a Scrafty goes for a Bulk Up. On the following turn, Marnie's going to heal back up with a full restore, and we're going to go for another Air Slash, knocking it down just below half. And with one more, we can take it down. Next up comes Morpeko. So assuming an electric move, we're going to swap out, sending in Venusaur as it goes for an Aura Wheel. It's then going to go for another Aura Wheel, knocking us down pretty low, and we're going to fire off an Earthquake, getting it down pretty low. Marnie's then going to use a full restore, and we're going to go for a Giga Drain because I know I need to heal up because I will not be able to take another Aura Wheel that is going to fire off on the following turn, getting us down to 34 HP. But with another Giga Drain, we take it out. Her final Pokemon, Grimmsnarl, comes in, and we're going to outspeed, going for a Sludge Bomb, doing a pretty massive damage as a Thunder Punch comes in, getting us down low. And with one more Sludge Bomb, we take down the Grimmsnarl, and we defeat Marnie. She then asks where we're from, and before we can answer, a Team Yell Grunt comes rushing in. Apparently there's a Gigantamax Pokemon just outside the city running a rampage, and from what I remember, you can't Gigantamax in Spike Myth, so that shouldn't be happening. We meet back up with Marnie just outside the Pokemon Center, where the entrance to Spike Myth is being blocked by these two edgy-looking grunts, who say we're supposed to just sit and wait while Spike Myth is being destroyed. So I guess it's time for us to battle up against these two randos so we can save Spike Myth. They identify themselves as Team Kronos, and they're sending Dusclops and a Cursula, and we're going to send Pikachu and Liepard. So after we beat them up pretty quick, because honestly I don't know why two Ghost Trainers thought they'd be able to hold back a Dark-type gym leader, they just disappear right before our very eyes. After defeating Dynamax versions of the three Kanto starters, we meet back up with Marnie to let her know that the situation's all set. She then notices that we don't have a Dynamax band and thinks it's weird that there's a gym challenger without one. And I think it's weird that you thought I was a gym challenger and used your championship team on me, but you know what, whatever. She officially introduces herself as the new Spike Myth gym leader, and just before we can introduce ourselves, she says she hears something on the beach and we gotta go investigate it. We tell her that we can't tell her what that giant portal is, but I bet she can probably guess. But we do introduce ourselves as Red, which she says is a funny name, so I guess now it's time for us to investigate a portal within a portal. And in that portal, we're back outside of Bill's house? Did we win? We meet back up with Looker on the other side of the portal, and I guess that means our first mission was an utter success. And based on our conversation and the fact that an international police officer doesn't know what Spike Myth is, I guess that Galar's in a different dimension than Kanto? Anywho, quest complete. And now it's time for us to head over to our second portal over by Mount Moon. And over on Route 4, we're going to grab ourselves a Primeape. And the reason why we caught that Primeape is because we can evolve it into an Annihilape, who not only has amazing typing, but honestly might be my favorite fighting Pokemon, period. Over on Route 4, we run into this guy who's totally not out of place and in the correct time period. He introduces himself as Volo, and he's surprised to see that we have Pokemon. But anywho, he wants to challenge us to a Pokemon battle, and who am I to say no? Volo starts off with Togekiss, and we're going to send in Pikachu. Going for a Thunderbolt, we are immediately going to KO the Togekiss, which is going to lead into his Aerodactyl, where we can do the same thing with him. Out next is going to come Roserade. So we're going to change things up, this time sending in Charizard. And the Roserade's going to go for a Petal Dance, which we can quad resist, but it still does a lot more than I expected. But we're then going to fire off a Fire Blast, and we're going to get this thing down to its Focus Sash, and it's going to go for another Petal Dance. And then firing off one more Blast, we take it down. Next in is going to come Garchomp. And why does this team seem so familiar as we swap out, sending in Blastoise, and the Garchomp goes for a Slash. Then going for an Iron Head, we're going to go for a Scald when I meant to click Ice Beam, so we're going to do that instead as it goes for an Earthquake, getting us down pretty low, but we can KO the Garchomp no problem. And with that, we defeat Volo. And then this mystery man named Volo, who's definitely in the correct time period, leaves. And me as a time cop sees nothing wrong with that. And after defeating Volo, we're going to step into this portal that's conveniently placed right next to him because there's nothing weird about this at all. And this is where we find ourselves on Route 216, which, as we all know, is in Sinnoh. But when 216? And after wandering around in some very familiar snow for a while, we run into one of these dinguses. And I guess it's time for us to take on Jupiter. She starts off by sending in Golbat, and we're sending in Pikachu. A Thunderbolt takes down the Golbat no problem, and that's going to lead into her next Pokemon, Sableye. And going for another Thunderbolt, we can take it down in one shot as well, which is going to lead to our Gastrodon. So when we swap out into Venusaur, the Gastrodon's going to go for an Earth Power, and it's going to score a decent hit on us. But then we can go for a ×4 Mega Drain, bringing this thing down way into the red and heal back up to full as it goes for another Earth Power. It scores a much bigger hit this time, and then Jupiter is going to heal up with a full restore, and we're going to roll a little bit higher, almost KOing it, healing back up again. Jupiter then uses her second full restore, and we're going to go for another Giga Drain, and then one more, grabbing the KO, which is going to lead into our final Pokemon, Tangrowth. So we're going to swap out, sending in Charizard as the Tangrowth goes for a Tickle? Whatever, we're going to go for a Fire Blast. And we can grab the Yoko on the Tangrowth, which means she's going to send in her actual final Pokemon, Skuntank. Then going for a Fire Blast on the Skuntank, we can take it down pretty low before a Night Slash does some decent damage to us. And with one more Fire Blast, we take down the Skuntank, and we defeat Jupiter. And she keeps talking about another recruit who was supposed to be here who hasn't showed up, and I genuinely don't know who they're talking about, but she promises not to forget us. After wandering around for a little while, we find another Ultra Wormhole with this guy with a Sneasel hanging out by it. He lets us know he's going to stand here and admire it for a little while, and he doesn't plan on leaving. So I guess that means I can't go inside of it. And after talking to this guy 5 times because he won't move, he challenges us to a Pokemon battle, sending in a Banette, and we're going to send in Pikachu. Going for a Thunderbolt on the first turn, we can score a KO on the Banette, no problem, which is going to lead into a Rampardos. We try to swap out, it goes for a Pursuit, scoring a massive hit on us, but luckily our Static does its thing as we send in Annihilate. He then wastes his turn going for a full restore, and we can go for a close combat, KOing the Rampardos. Next up comes Magmortar, and we're going to outspeed, going for a Rock Slide, scoring a pretty massive hit as the Magmortar goes for a Flamethrower, doing about 60% to us. Then after using a full restore, we're going to go for a Rage Fist, doing about the same as we did before. And with one more, we take it down. Up next comes Cacturn, and it's going to outspeed us, going for a Sucker Punch, getting us down to just 24 HP as we get it down pretty low with an Ice Punch. So assuming another Sucker Punch, we're going to swap out, this time sending in Charizard as he swaps out, sending in Zangoose. Unfortunately, this thing has Guts activated, so I have to hope I can OHKO it, and of course I don't, but all it does is go for a Swords Dance. Which means as long as I don't miss, we can KO it, and we do. So he's going to pivot, sending Cacturn back in, as it goes for a Sucker Punch on Charizard, doing a good amount, but an Air Slash takes it down. His final Pokemon comes in, and it's just a Sneasel wearing a bandana, as it goes for an Icicle Crash, KOing Charizard. So we're going to send an Annihilate, which was dumb because obviously this thing's going to outspeed me, going for another Icicle Crash. So I guess we're going to send in Snorlax instead, because I be thick, as it goes for another Icicle Crash, doing barely anything. We can then go for an Earthquake, doing a lot less than I expected. After that, it's going to go for a Knockoff, and we can go for a Rock Slide, getting it down pretty low. And after the Sneasel goes for another Icicle Crash, getting me down to just 25 HP, it dodges and then KOs Snorlax. But that also means Sneasel takes itself down, and we win. He then says something ominous that she won't be able to run far, and I don't know who she is, but I hope she gets away. And after entering the wormhole, we end up back over on Route 4, and I'm not sure if this is mission accomplished, but I beat up some Plasma Grunts and then a guy who really likes tarot cards. Okay, cool. So Galar doesn't exist, but Sinnoh does. That's good to know. Hold on a second, dum-dum. Lookers from the Sinnoh games. He also asked if we met a trainer with a Sneasel, who is very intrigued by the portals, and we can confirm that this was indeed the case. He then lets us know our next mission's over on Route 9, to the east of Cerulean City. Before I head into the portal over on Route 9, check out these overworld Zangoose and Seviper fighting. I love when fan games put Pokemon into the overworld. But anywho, once we get over to Route 9 and go through the wormhole, we find ourselves at the Aether Foundation. And once we take the elevator over to the Aether Garden, we run into Wick, who seems incredibly familiar with Ultra Beasts, which obviously makes sense. This is where they're from. She then says that maybe we should meet their president because she's really keen on learning about Ultra Beasts, which sounds totally innocent and not at all nefarious. And then right after that, we get a notification that all visitors need to proceed to the exit of the Aether Foundation. And apparently there's just been a theft, so this is probably right when Lily is stealing Cosmog, which is the most best time to be here, definitely. After wandering around aimlessly through the Aether Foundation, for a while, we run into Gladion. And I guess it's time for us to beat up this mama's boy, because he's looking for his sister. He starts off with Crobat, and we're going to send in Pikachu. The Crobat's going to miss his first attack on us, which is going to leave it open for a Thunderbolt so we can KO it. Next up is going to come a Porygon, And we're going to go for a Brick Break on Pikachu, bringing it down pretty low, and the Porygon's going to fire off a Shadow Ball, getting us down just below half. And with one more Brick Break, we can grab the KO on it. Next up is going to come as Lucario. And we're going to outspeed, going for a Brick Break, getting it down into the red as the Lucario goes for a Swords Dance. And hate to say it, buddy, but you probably should have attacked me. And after using a full restore, we're going to use Brick Break again, getting it down a little bit lower than we did before. And Gladion's going to heal it up one more time before he ultimately swaps it out for Umbreon, who can tank the Brick Break pretty well. So we're going to swap Pikachu out, this time sending in Snorlax, and the Umbreon's going to go for a Wish. And I'm realizing it's on level 87. I should probably start leveling up. The Umbreon then goes for a Foul Play, doing a massive amount of damage to us, and I went for a Crunch for some reason. So we're going to swap out, this time sending in Annihilate as the Umbreon sets up another Wish. We're then going to go for a Close Combat, doing a pretty good amount of damage, getting it pretty low, as the Umbreon goes for a Foul Play, getting us down pretty low as well. And hoping for a higher roll, we're going to go for another Close Combat, bringing it way down to the red, before the Umbreon goes for another Foul Play, KOing our monkey. So now we're going to send in Charizard. Go for an Air Slash and pick up the KO on Umbreon. Lucario comes back in, and we can go for another Air Slash, KOing it as well. He's going to send in his Ace Volley, and I'm not sure what typing it is, but I guess it's probably water. So we're going to send in Venusaur, and as it goes for an Ice Beam, scoring a massive hit on us, we're going to go for a Giga Drain, doing about 50% as we heal up a little bit. The Silvally is then going to go for a Surf, because I guess Gladion doesn't want to win, so one more Giga Drain takes it down, and we defeat Gladion. Gladion then threatens to actually fight us with his fists, just before Wit comes back in. It looks like Gladion's just here trying to find Lily, and while that's probably almost definitely the source of the wormhole, I should wander around the Aether Foundation some more first. After figuring it out we need to turn on a generator, we head over to the generator room where we run into another Chronos Grunt. And after beating them up, they say that their job's already done here once again and just kinda leave. And after beating up a bunch of Skull Grunts, we run into Gladion and Guzma, who are having some kind of argument. Gladion then asks if we can take care of Guzma because he has to find his mother and his sister. So I guess it's time for us to take on Guzma and Team Skull. He starts off with Vikavolt, and we're going to send in Pikachu. We're going to swap Pikachu out, setting in Charizard, and I probably should have done this to begin with, as it goes for a Bug Buzz, which obviously we quad resist. We're then going to go for a Fire Blast so we can grab the Oko on the Vikavolt. Next up comes Pinsir, and we're going to go for another Fire Blast, and we're going to grab the KO on it, no problem. When Masquerain comes in, we know how scary this thing can be with its Intimidate, but we can fire off another Fire Blast, grabbing the KO. Which means when Scizor comes in, guess what, buddy? Quad effective, super dead. And then his final Pokemon, Golisopod, comes in, and we're going to swap out when I assume he's going to go for a Liquidation, and we call it, sending an Annihilate. And then we can go for a Rock Slide, doing a decent amount of damage as it fires off another Liquidation, getting us down low. So we're going to swap out, pivoting the Blastoise instead, as it's going to go for an Aqua Jet because it wanted to secure the KO. It tries to go for First Impression, but that's not how First Impression works, buddy, and we can fire off a few Dark Pulses, getting it down pretty low as it goes for a Leech Life, scoring a massive hit, holy crap. It then goes for another Aqua Jet, and we're going to go for a Flash Cannon this time. And when nothing's really working, I'm going to hope it tries to go for another Leech Life, so we swap into Charizard as it does, so it's not really going to do much of anything to him. Then from here we can outspeed, go for an Air Slash, KO the Golisopod, and defeat Guzma. And after we beat him, even though he was hired by the president to protect her so that way nobody would bother her, he's just like, yeah, I guess you guys can go. Once we head into the president's office, we're going to find a bunch of Team Chronos Grunts yet again. And after we beat them up, we find this dude in this cool mask. We don't know exactly what they're arguing about, but we do know that Team Chronos is doing something with the Ultra Beast, which of course Lusamine doesn't like. This mysterious stranger then asks if we're here to help, but then he finds out we're actually here to arrest them. This mysterious masked Chronos man points out that with the Ultra Beast gone, Lusamine threw away her family and her life literally for nothing. And that's gotta feel really bad, doesn't it? And with that, she runs out of the room. And while he's not wrong, that was kinda cold. And I guess Lily wasn't the blonde thief who stole Cosmog, it was this dude. And I guess now it's time for us to take on Goliath, the commander of Team Chronos. He starts off with Chandelure, and we're gonna send in Pikachu. We're gonna outspeed on the first turn, going for a Thunderbolt, getting this thing down super low as it fires off a Flamethrower, KOing Pikachu. So we're gonna swap out, this time sending in Blastoise. And once Goliath uses the full restore, we can fire off a Skull, getting it down super low again, which is gonna lead him to heal up once more. And after we go for 2 more Skulls and it goes for a Calm Mind, we can easily take it down. Up next is gonna come Dusknoir. who's going to go for a Shadow Sneak immediately, doing a little bit of chip damage to us, and we fire off a Dark Pulse, doing about a third. And once we can fire off another Dark Pulse, it goes for a Thunder Punch, getting us down just a bit below half, but we can easily take it out on the following turn. Next up is going to come Delamise, and I never 100% remember how this thing works, so we're going to swap out, setting in Charizard, and this goes for a Power Whip. Then when we can go for a Fire Blast, we can score a massive hit and the Oko on it. Goliath then sends in an Aegis Slash next, who's going to use a King Shield on the first turn so it can avoid our Fire Blast. But once we can go through it on the following turn, we can take it down way into the red, but it tries to go for a substitute, which it can't use. We luck out on the next turn as it doesn't go for a King Shield, so we take it down. And this is going to lead into his Ace Houndstone. And honestly, that's not fair. And luckily for me, it doesn't go for Last Respects, it goes for a Shadow Sneak, and we can get it down pretty low. And on the following turn, it goes for a Shadow Sneak again, which means after an Air Slash, we take it out, and he probably should have gone for Last Respects. But we defeat Goliath. Goliath then vows this will be the last time we beat him. And it doesn't matter if he lost the battle, he got Cosmog, and he's leaving. But I'm pretty sure by Pokemon rules, you're supposed to give me Cosmog. But I guess Goliath doesn't follow the rules because he just leaves. We catch back up with 2 of the 3 blondes and the purple-haired lady. Lusamine is apologizing to Gladion and became a good person? So, is that good or bad? Oh, there's Lily. She's fine. Lily's then the first person who points out that our name is Red and we wear all red. And with the Aether family reunited, they all vow to get Cosmog back. Poor little Nebby. And our work here is done. I've successfully changed the future. Before we can report back to Looker, we run back into Everett, who asks us if he even knows what we're doing, and I'm gonna be honest, no, I don't. Everett then warns us that if we don't know exactly what we're doing, there could be dire consequences, not only for that universe, but for our universe. And even though we made the Aether family all huggy and kissy, they're not supposed to be like that. And Team Plasma's not supposed to give up before they go up Mount Cornet, so I'm pretty sure we're already ruining things. He then warns if we continue to be so nonchalant with what we're doing, he might have to stop us. After we return back to Looker and give him the updates, that guy who couldn't even beat Gen 1 Blue comes rushing in. Looker reveals that his name is Basil, and I guess he's also a time cop reporting in. Once Basil realizes that we're not only in the room, but who we are, he immediately wants to battle. But before he gets the chance to, Looker sends him off to Celadon City, but not before he gives us a flamethrower TR. Thanks, buddy. And our next mission is going to take us towards Saffron City. And once we get back outside, Basil's there waiting for us, and I guess it's time for us to take him on in a Pokemon battle. He starts off with Emboar, and we're going to send him Pikachu. And I'm guessing this guy is from Unova. We're going to go for a Thunderbolt in the initial turn, and we're going to get him down to about a quarter as he unleashes a massive hit Okoing Pikachu, but we do get our static off. We're then going to send in Charizard, and once he uses the full restore, we can go for an Air Slash, bringing him back down pretty low as he uses a second full restore. Once we score a big hit, he goes for a superpower, scoring a massive hit on us despite it being not very effective. And with one more Air Slash, we take him down. Up next comes Crocodile, and we're going to swap out, sending in Venusaur, as the Crocodile goes for a knockoff. Crocodile is then going to go for a Stone Edge on the following turn, bringing us down to just 36 HP, and a Giga Drain is going to bring him way down to the red. He's then going to swap Crocodile out, sending in Vikavolt, and we're going to go for another Giga Drain, doing barely anything. So we're going to swap, this time sending in Snorlax, and the Vikavolt goes for a Bug Buzz. The Vikavolt goes for another Bug Buzz, which is going to bring us down low, and we can go for a Rock Slide, getting it low as well. But knowing I don't have anywhere to run, I stay in going for a Crunch, but for some reason he swaps into Crocodile, which we can take down. Once Vikavolt comes back in, it's the only thing that can outspeed a Snorlax, and it takes us out. So we're going to send in Charizard after Snorlax goes down, and with an Air Slash we take out Vikavolt. Aerodactyl comes in as his next Pokemon. So we're going to swap again, this time switching into Blastoise as the Aerodactyl goes for a Stone Edge. Aerodactyl's going to outspeed us, going for another Stone Edge, bringing us into the red as a Scald goes for almost the Oko, but this thing hangs on with a Focus Sash. And it then goes for an Earthquake, KOing us. And we're going to send in Annihilate. Luckily, it misses a Stone Edge on the following turn, so an Ice Punch takes it out. Basil sends in his Mudscale. And this is going to be annoying because of stamina, but we do about a third as it goes for a Toxic. And I guess it doesn't have stamina as we go for a second Ice Punch, getting it down pretty low. And with a third one, we take it down. And this is going to lead into his final Pokemon, Heracross, where it's going to go for a Pin Missile, and it's going to do some minimal damage to us as we go for a Rage Fist, scoring a massive hit. Heracross is then going to go for another Pin Missile because I don't think it has anything else that can hit us, and one more Rage Fist takes it down, and we defeat Basil. Basil says that even though we beat him, that doesn't make us the best, because he's the best, even though he lost. Don't worry about it, don't think about it too much. But anyways, he's off to Celadon City. We run into Masquerade again over on Route 6, where he's offended that we don't help him catch this Machamp. So he says he's going to take it out on us, and he's the master of mimicking. He's going to battle us with a team of a trainer he really likes. And he starts off with Dugtrio? I don't know who the hell starts with Dugtrio. But we're going to swap out, sending in Blastoise, as the Dugtrio goes for an Earth Power. After it misses on the following turn, we're going to go for a Scald, bringing it down into the red, and the Dugtrio then manages to connect with a Fissure. Are you kidding me? So we're going to send in Charizard, where he's going to swap out, sending in Nidoking, and we miss our attack. So we're going to swap out, setting in Snorlax, as the Nidoking decides to go for an Ice Beam. It follows up with a Sludge Wave, and we go for an Earthquake, scoring a pretty big hit. And then it goes for an Earth Power on the following turn, getting us down just below half, and we can take it out with another Earthquake. Dugtrio's going to come back in, and once it goes for an Earth Power, it does a little bit of damage to us, but we can take it out. Next up comes a Nidoqueen, and it's going to go for a Growl, lowering our attack, so we go for a Seed Bomb, doing barely anything. We're then going to swap out, sending in Venusaur, as the Nidoqueen goes for a Scratch. It then goes for a Poison Jab, doing barely anything, and we're going to set up a Leech Seed so we can keep getting some chip healing in to try to keep ourselves as close to full as we can. The Nidoqueen then goes for a Tail Whip, and I'm not sure why a level 94 Nidoqueen has Leer and Tail Whip, but I guess I shouldn't be complaining. I meant Growl and Tail Whip. Whatever. Anywho, it's dead now. Masquerade sends in Rhyperior next, and going for a quad effective Giga Drain, we can take it out no problem. And with that, we defeat this silly little fella. And once we go into the Ultra Wormhole over on Route 6, we find ourselves in a cave, where it looks like we're going to have to battle some Team Aqua grunts.
And this is where we run into Archie. I'm surprised how'd you manage to follow us? I suppose you must be in the envoy from Captain Stern.
And since we got here before Ethan and May, I guess it's going to be up to us to stop Archie as he sends in his Mightyena. We're going to send in Pikachu. We're going to go for a Thunderbolt, scoring a crit Oko on the Mightyena. And this is going to lead into a Sharpedo, which he's obviously going to Mega Evolve into a Mega Sharpedo. But we still outspeed it, and it's still a Sharpedo. Next up comes Muck. Oh, we're going to swap out, and we're going to send in Snorlax. And the Muck is going to go for a Sludge Bomb, which unfortunately poisons us. It then actually manages to hit us with a Focus Blast, bringing us down just below half, and we go for an Earthquake, doing about a third. So we're going to swap out, this time sending in Charizard as it goes for a Thunderbolt, doing about 40% to us. But we're still in the fight, and I'm going to go for a Fire Blast, bringing this down into the red as another Thunderbolt gets us pretty low. Archie's then going to go for a Full Store because duh, and we're going to miss our Fire Blast. So we're going to swap out, sending in Blastoise, where I hope I can get the burn off with a Skull, but he goes for another Thunderbolt. And now that we're paralyzed, we're going to be going second, and I do about a third with a Scald as he fires off another Thunderbolt, getting me down just below half. And I can't keep risking this, so we're going to swap out, sending in Venusaur, and I am just not playing this very well. Venusaur then goes for an Earthquake, bringing him down to about a quarter as a Thunderbolt comes in doing barely anything to us. And honestly, I completely forgot that my Venusaur had Earthquake as he swaps into Crobat. So we're assuming a flying move, we're going to swap into Pikachu as Yai goes for a Brave Bird, doing just over half to us. And Pikachu can outspeed the Crobat and grab the KO. When Muck comes back in, we can go for a Thunderbolt KOing it, which is going to lead into Walrein as his final Pokemon. We can go for a Thunderbolt on the Walrein, quickly pick up the Yoko, and we defeat Archie, stopping Team Aqua.
You might be strong, but I have a blue orb. You know what that means?
After defeating Archie, the second most attractive member of Team Aqua comes rushing in. Shelly warns Archie that she got a call from the Weather Institute, where she had a program left up running the numbers, and apparently if they wake up Kyogre, its power will destroy Hoenn, not give them their perfect water world that they want. But Archie's not afraid of a dumb thing like math. And after releasing Kyogre's fury all over Hoenn, he gets a very important phone call from Matt, who reports that the math was right. It's way too much water. 7 out of 10. And even Archie has to agree. There's way too much water. And that's when, slightly too late, Steven Stone appears out of nowhere. And he can't wait to hear what their plan is to fix this, cause he's certainly not gonna do it. But Steven's confident so long as we stop Kyogre before Groudon also wakes up, everything will be totally fine. And that's when he gets a phone call. And after a few moments, he let us know that everything got significantly worse because Groudon's also awake. And while there's way too much water down here, there's way too much sun in Northern Hoenn. So the two of us fly to Satopolis City, where we need to take care of both of them. Once we meet up with Steven and Wallace, he lets us know the plan. 7 of the gym leaders along with Juan are going to try to stop Groudon. The Elite Four and Wallace are going to try to stop Kyogre, and Steven and I are going to Sky Pillar to watch the entire world drown or burn. And at the top of Sky Pillar, we don't find Rayquaza. We find this guy. And this mystery man sent Rayquaza to a different dimension, leaving this one to perish. Which means it's going to be up to Steven and I to repopulate the Earth. When Steven orders his Metagross to Meteor Mash this random man, he sends it away with a single blow. The mystery man then summons this man, simply named David, and tells him to take care of Steven and I. And then he warns David he should probably leave after beating us up because this dimension's probably gonna go bye-bye pretty soon. David then lets us know that he has no interest in fighting us, but whatever Master Spectra wants, Master Spectra gets. And now a battle begins. David starts off by sending in Marowak, and we're gonna send in Blastoise. The Marowaks can outspeed us, going for a Flare Blitz, scoring a pretty massive hit against our Blastoise, and we can go for a Scald, grabbing the KO. Next up is gonna come a Golurk, who we can outspeed, go for a Scald, and get it down pretty low. And luckily we get the burn as the Shadow Punch does barely anything to us. David's then gonna use a full restore on the following turn, so we can go for a Scald, getting it back down into the red, only for him to heal up one more time before we can take him down after a couple more Scalds. Next up is going to be Runegrigus, and going for another Scald, we're going to bring it down pretty low as this thing goes for a Body Press, bringing us down into the red. And with just one more Scald, we can take the Runegrigus down. Next up comes Dragapult, and I was hoping I would outspeed, but unfortunately I don't, and Blastoise gets knocked out. So we're going to swap out, sending in Charizard, and it's going to go for a Shadow Ball, scoring a decent hit, while we fire off a Dragon Claw, doing just about 50%. On the following turn, it's going to go for another Draco Meteor, but it scores a crit. So I guess we're going to send in Pikachu. And even though it's going to get resisted, we can go for a Thunderbolt, getting this thing down pretty low and the paralysis off. Which means now we outspeed and we can grab the KO. And with that, we defeat David. And after being defeated, Dave's just like, I guess I'm going to leave. See ya. And at this point, I'm really wondering where Ethan and May are. And I guess it's time for us to take on Kyogre. And with that, we bring Hoenn back to a respectable amount of water. And now Wallace and I are going to head over to take care of Groudon. And for saving the Hoenn region, Steven is going to give us one of the Hoenn starter Pokemon's final forms. And even though it's by far the worst one, it's my favorite, so I'm picking Sceptile. And we get the Sceptile type! Oh my god, yes! Which means we now have access to a Mega Pokemon. And Wallace also gives us our Blastoise Mega Stone. And who says messing with the multiverses is a bad thing, even though Mega Evolution isn't a thing in our version of Kanto? I got Mega Stones, baby. Back over on Route 6, we run into this very pointy man. After we get back to Looker and let him know that we saved the Hoenn region from a couple of weather kaiju, he congratulates us. Looker then points out that there's been several times that Team Cronus has taken legendary Pokemon out from their original dimensions and put them somewhere else. So we need to figure out how they're freely moving from dimension to dimension. But before our next interdimensional mission, we need to do a regular police mission. Apparently in Celadon City, Erica was recently attacked by a gym challenger, and we need to go make sure she's okay and try to get some information. We meet up with Erica over in the Celadon gym and try to see what's going on. He lets us know that a challenger had come in earlier today, who was unusually aggressive, and during their battle he used moves that their Pokemon normally shouldn't have been able to use, which was not only impressive but also incredibly intimidating. And after the battle, not only would he not accept her badge, he threw it at her and continued to antagonize her. And that's when the girls called the cops. She then assured us that everything's okay and she's just going to take a couple days off to rest. After talking to Erica, Looker gives us a call on the phone and lets us know that Vincent is hanging out over by the game corner, and we should check in on him and see what's going on. Over in the game corner, we run into Vincent, where he says he has some information that Looker might want. Apparently there's been a new scientific branch that's been opened recently in Silphco. He then lets us know that this new branch has been doing some kind of experiments on Pokemon, and maybe if we head there, we could find something a little interesting for Looker. After exploring Silphco, we find a couple of teleporters that eventually lead us to this room with a man named Ezekiel. We ask Ezekiel if he's the one who was harassing Erica, and he confesses that it was indeed him. He had something he needed to test out, and the Saffron City gym was closed. He then goes off on a rant saying that if everybody had the same opportunities, the gym leaders, the Elite Four, and even me, the champion, would be outclassed. Only the people who have means to go around collecting badges are the ones that get to collect them, and that's not fair to everybody else. And this sounds a lot like what the bird lady was saying earlier. And I guess now we're gonna have to face off against Ezekiel. He starts off by sending in this Dust Noir, and we send in Snorlax. But we also need to keep in mind that Erica said that this dude's Pokemon had moves they weren't supposed to have. But we go for a Crunch, and it's still super effective against Dust Noir, so that's nice. He then swaps out, and he sends in a Grovyle instead, and we're gonna go for a Crunch. As he goes to set up a Swords Dance on the following turn, we can go for a second Crunch, and we get this thing down into the red. With the defense drop, Ezekiel's going to heal up, and we can go for another Crunch, getting it just below half. It then goes for an Aqua Step, getting us way down into the red to just 49 HP, but we can take it out. He sends in a Tauros, going for a Fake Out, which is going to KO our Snorlax. And unfortunately, this thing's rocking a Burn Orb, and we're going to send an Annihilate. He then revives one of his fallen Pokemon, but we can use a close combat, KOing the Tauros as he sends in an Electivire next. He's then going to use an X defense, and this dude is just like so cheap. Anyways, we're going to go for a Rock Slide, doing a bit of damage. We're then going to swap out Annihilate, sending in Venusaur, and this dude calls it, going for an Acrobatics, taking us down super low. But honestly, at this point, I'm kind of in a spot where I can't switch, and I need to let Venusaur go down. We're then going to send Annihilate back in. And the Electivire is going to go for a Bolt Break, taking us out. Next, we're going to send in Pikachu. And honestly, it hurts my soul doing this, but we're going to take this opportunity to revive Snorlax as the Pikachu gets taken down to about half. And don't judge me, this isn't a Nuzlocke. We're going to revive Venusaur as well, before another Bolt Break's going to come in, taking out Pikachu. Now we're going to send in Venusaur. And he's going to go for an Acrobatics, getting us down low, but we can get a Leech Seed off. That way we can get some chip healing in. Seeing a KO with something else, he goes for a close combat, which is going to lower his defenses, and Venusaur goes down. But this does mean that's going to help counteract his X defense, so he goes for another Bolt Beak on Snorlax, getting him down super low, and we can go for an Earthquake, getting him down just below half. And honestly, from here, I'm just going to heal up Snorlax again as he goes for another Bolt Beak, doing quite a bit of damage to Snorlax, but we're going to get healed up back to about half. He then uses another full restore, and you know what, buddy? I can do the same damn thing. He's then going to go for an Acrobatics, and we can go for an Earthquake, getting him down to about half. He then goes for a close combat, scoring a massive hit, getting us down to 22 HP, and with his defense back to normal, we can get him down super low, and the Leech Seed can take him down to just barely anything. And with one more Max Potion, we're going to heal up, and Acrobatics is going to get us down about a third, and then he goes down. He's going to send that Grovyle he revived back in, and it goes for an Earthquake, scoring a pretty big hit, and we go for a Crunch. On the following turn, he's going to go for another Earthquake, KOing Snorlax. So we're going to send in Charizard. We outspeed and miss our Fire Blast as he goes for a Swords Dance on the following turn. He's then going to swap out, sending this Dust Noir back in, and I didn't realize he revived 2 Pokemon. I feel a lot less bad now. And after going for a couple of Fire Blasts, we can take this thing down pretty low, but not before he heals back up some more. It then goes for a Fire Spin for reasons, and after a couple more attacks, we can finally take the Dust Noir down. Having Grovyle come back in, we miss our Air Slash as it goes for an Aqua Step, KOing us. So we're going to send Blastoise in. And after reviving Venusaur, it's going to go for an Aqua Step to increase his speed even further. And after it goes for a Leaf Blade, it can KO our Blastoise, which is going to lead us to send in our Venusaur. It then goes for another Aqua Step, doing a decent amount of damage to us, and we're going to go for a Sludge Bomb, KOing this lizard, as Ezekiel sends in his final Pokemon, Scizor. But guess what, buddy? I'm reviving Charizard because I hate you. After going back and forth with this Scizor for a while, we eventually send in Charizard using our last Fire Blast, taking it down, which is going to lead into this Fire-type Feraligatr. And after a little bit of back and forth and it using Dragon Dance, it ultimately takes out our Charizard, and of course it has Moxie. Sending Blastoise in as our final Pokemon, this thing is going to go for another Flare Blitz, taking us down pretty low, but we can fire off a Skull, bringing it down wicked low into the red. And I don't even feel bad about healing against this dude since he's a massive cheater. And I think it's hilarious that he took himself out with his own Flare Blitz, and we defeat Ezekiel. So as we're facing off against Ezekiel, I have to say I'm honestly not super proud of myself on this fight. But if he's going to be a dirty cheater, then guess what? So am I. And despite the fact that we just beat him and his team of level 100 hacked in Pokemon, he says that we are not a very good trainer. which honestly, I might not be the best trainer, but that's incredibly rude. And I guess that means we accomplished the mission because he will no longer talk to us. Alright, see ya. After we update Looker on what's going on over at Silphco, he lets us know that a new portal has appeared over on Route 7. So I guess we have our next mission. As we approach the next wormhole, Everett stops us once again and lets us know that we need to come with him so we can explain exactly what we're doing wrong and why we're destroying the universe. He introduces himself properly as Everett and lets us know that he's a quantum physicist from another universe. He then lets us know that his dimension hopping formula was stolen from him and he's trying to figure out who stole it. Apparently, whenever you go into a parallel universe, you become imbued with something called Z energy, and he's being able to track that we've been to other universes based off that energy that we're giving off. And while he knows we're messing around in other planes of existence, he doesn't think we're the ones that stole the formula. But he is begging us to please stop going in the portals. And of course, I'm gonna say no. And this is when he literally says what I was saying about Brandon and May being missing in Hoenn. You simply can't deprive other universes of the creation of potential heroes. So I'm gonna have to stop you by force. And I guess now we need to Pokemon battle this guy. Everett starts off with whatever the heck this thing is, and we send in Snorlax. The Raytor is gonna go for a play rough on the first turn, and I'm pretty sure this is one of the beta Pokemon. And we're gonna go for an Earthquake, doing about a quarter. On the following turn, he's gonna swap out, this time sending in an Aquaria, and we're gonna go for another Earthquake. It follows up by going for a Psychic, dropping our special defense, and then we're gonna go for a Seed Bomb, which I assume this beta phase thing nullifies weaknesses? Because this thing is definitely water type. So we're gonna swap out, sending in Venusaur as it goes for another Psychic. And I don't know why I did that. So we're gonna swap out again, this time sending in Blastoise as it goes for a Signal Beam this time, doing a little bit of damage. Yep. We're then going to go for a Dark Pulse where, yes, it says its weaknesses are nullified, so this thing is Water Psychic. Everett then heals up with a full restore, and we're going to go for a Scald. But if its weaknesses are nullified, so are its resistances, and now this thing is back at 50% as a Psychic takes us down into the red. And once we get it down into the red, it fires off a Signal Beam, grabbing the KO. So we're going to go ahead, sending in Pikachu, because I'm hoping I can outspeed these things, as Everett uses another full restore. And a Light Ball powered Thunderbolt gets him down just below half, so he's going to swap out, sending Ratoria back in, and we can go for a Thunderbolt, doing enough damage to take it out. Bagaro comes in next, and yep, these are all just beta Pokemon, and they're absolutely amazing as we take it down just below half. Another Thunderbolt takes it down. Aquaria comes back in, and we can go for another Thunderbolt, grabbing ourselves the KO. Up next comes this beta Sharpedo, and we're going to go for another Thunderbolt, scoring a pretty big hit as it goes for a Heavy Slam. And with another Thunderbolt, we can take this monster down. His final Pokemon, CatDog Girafarig, comes in, and we're going to go for a Thunderbolt, getting it down just below 50% as a Shadow Ball takes us out. So we're going to go ahead and send an Annihilate, and we can outspeed, going for a Rage Fist, getting it down really low as this thing fires off a Dark Pulse. And with one more Rage Fist, we take it down, which is going to lead into Beta Garchomp. It's going to go ahead and go for a Dragon Claw, bringing us down to just 45 HP, and we're going to go for an Ice Punch because I keep on thinking to go for the good move. So we're going to swap out, sending in Charizard, and we're going to go for an Air Slash, hoping we can get the flinch off. Unfortunately, we don't as it goes for a Dragon Claw. But one more Air Slash takes it down, and we defeat Everett. After the battle's over, Everett says that it's imperative that we not interfere in other universes because if something were to happen to us while we're over there, not only would those universes never find their own heroes, this universe would lose theirs. He then proposes a potential alliance, where he could do the proper research before we go into one of these things, but he's gotta think it over. And just like with everything else in the Pokemon world, after beating this guy up, we're allowed to go do whatever we want, so we go into this wormhole, which looks like it led us to the Plasma Frigate in Black and White too. And as we're making our way through the Plasma Frigate, these two Plasma Grunts say there's nothing we can do to stop them. And then that's when Hugh shows up, who must still be here because he doesn't count as a hero. And after we beat them in the battle and the Grunt refuses to move, Hugh just punches this dude in the face. And the girl's like, alright, yeah, you can leave. Hugh then lets us know that he's here to find his sister's Purloin, and I guess we're going to keep on moving forward through the frigate, and he's going to look for his sister's lost cat. After meeting back up with Hugh, we let him know that he indeed found his sister's lost cat on a random Grunt we already beat up. And he also thinks he found something important for controlling the ship, but kitties are more important. We find Corliss piloting the frigate where he asks us if we believe that mutual understanding can help develop greater bonds between people and Pokemon. And I respond, yes, because if that helps people connect with other people, of course it would help people connect with their Pokemon. And with this response, Corliss is giddy with excitement because he is hoping that a certain someone has already captured a certain something, and he can't wait to see their bond. And I guess now it's time to Pokemon battle because it's Pokemon. He starts off with Porygon Z and we send in Snorlax. I'm going to swap out Snorlax and I'm going to send in Annihilate as the Porygon tries to use Tri-Attack. On the following turn, it's going to go for a Thunderbolt, doing a decent amount of damage to us, and we can go for a close combat, grabbing the Oko. Out next is going to come Magnezone, and we manage to outspeed, going for another close combat, and we can grab the Yoko on it as well. This is going to lead into his Metagross, where we're going to go for a Rage Fist, and we can also Oko that. When Bohemian comes in, luckily for me, it's like the slowest thing in the world, and it goes down in one hit, which is going to lead into Rotom. I'm then going to swap Annihilate out, sending in Venusaur as the Rotom Wash goes for a Hydro Pump. On the following turn, it goes for another Hydro Pump, getting us down to about half as we go for a Giga Drain, getting it to about half. It then goes for a Will-O-Wisp, that way it can cut our attack, but luckily for me, I don't need to attack, but I guess the burn damage isn't great. But with another Giga Drain, it's going to get down super low. Corliss then uses his first full restore, and we can go for another Giga Drain, doing about 50%, healing ourselves back up. This thing is then going to Volt Switch out, and sending in Corliss' only remaining Pokemon, a Klinklang. I'm then going to swap Venusaur out, sending in Snorlax as the Klinklang tries to go for a Gear Grind. On the following turn, it's going to go for a Shift Gear, and we're going to go for an Earthquake, grabbing a massive hit, getting it down pretty low. It's then going to go for a Gear Grind, getting us down just below half, but an Earthquake secures the KO. Rotom Watch is going to come back in as his final Pokemon, and it's going to go for a Pain Split, which is honestly not going to do it any good, and we can bring it way down into the red. Corliss then uses the second full restore as another Seed Bomb that's going to take this thing down a little bit below half. And once this thing goes for another Hydro Pump, getting us down super low, we fire off a Seed Bomb, getting this thing way down into the red. Assuming another Hydro Pump, we're going to swap out, sending in Blastoise, who can tank it no problem. And it's going to outspeed us, getting us down to about half, but with a Dark Pulse, we take down the Rotom Wash, and we defeat Corliss. Corliss then lets us know we're about to get to the Grand Chasm and will gladly drop us off. And this guy is like super polite. And inside this cave, we find Ghetsis in N. And Ghetsis is giving his evil victory speech to N, since there's no Nate or Hilda to help us. Ghetsis then orders Kyurem to annihilate us, and the battle begins. We start off with Charizard as we get taken down just below half, and we're going to go for a Dragon Claw, doing about a third. On the following turn, it goes for a Fusion Flare. I don't know why, but it's going to keep us up long enough to go for a second Dragon Claw, bringing it down below half. And after going for a third Dragon Claw, we can get it down pretty low as it goes for a Free Shock, taking down Charizard. So we're going to send in Pikachu, who unfortunately is not faster, but can somehow tank a Dragon Pulse as we get this thing down super low as the Kyurem then goes for a Fusion Flare. Finally setting in Blastoise, it's going to go for a Freezing Shock, but we can finish it off with an Ice Beam, defeating Kyurem. With Ghetsis defeated, Kyurem and Reshiram then defuse. And Ghetsis, in the face of defeat, says like a really bunch of mean stuff to N. And this is where N reveals that Ghetsis is his father. But he keeps on calling him a hybrid monster, so like, did Ghetsis with, As Ghetsis continues to scream, N turns around, starting to ignore him and asks who we are. We introduce ourselves, and he introduces himself. And that's when the two of us hear a portal emerging, and we let N know that we have to go. And farewell, my friend. I hope you figure out your daddy issues. And we know what you did to that Pokemon. Oh shoot, I was not ready for a double battle. I was just coming to tease this guy. The Toxicroak goes for a Sucker Punch on my Blastoise, as the Reshiram goes for a Blue Flare, immediately KOing the Toxicroak, and we fire off a Dark Pulse, doing about 60%. Cofagrigus then goes for a Dark Pulse on us, doing a little bit of damage as he heals up with his leftovers. Ghetsis is then going to send in Electros, so I'm going to swap Blastoise out just in case, sending in Venusaur. A Thunderbolt comes in on Venusaur, doing a little bit of damage, and then Cofagrigus is going to go for a Power Split. Reshiram is then going to go for a Fire Blast on the Cofagrigus, bringing it down super low as the Electros Thunderbolts Reshiram, and then we take it out with a Giga Drain. Ghetsis is then going to send in Drapion, and I know that it's going to be super effective against Reshiram, but honestly I kind of have to go for it for the Drapion. But before I can even get it off, the Electros already Earthquakes me, and then I end up getting taken down by the Drapion. So we're going to send in Annihilate. As Ghetsis uses a full restore on the Drapion, we're going to go for a Rock Slide, doing a bit of damage to his side of the field, and a Blue Flare unfortunately misses. Drapion then goes for a Poison Jab on the Restroom as we go for another Rock Slide, bringing their side of the field down a bit below half, and a Blue Flare takes down the Drapion. Seismitoad's going to come up next, and that's when I go for a Close Combat on the Electros, finishing it off. Restroom then goes for a Blue Flare on the Seismitoad, doing a bit of damage as all it does is set up a Rain Dance. And then finally gets his sense in his Hydreigon. Seismitoad then goes for a Hydro Pump on the Restroom, grabbing the KO, and then a Dark Pulse on my Annihilate, also KOing it. Which means we're only down to 2 Pokemon as we send in Blastoise. And I didn't realize N only had Reshiram, and I'm in a really crummy spot now. But we're going to go for an Ice Beam on the Hydreigon and going to knock it down super low. And I'm also going to start cheating because I only have 2 Pokemon to bring in. So we're going to send in Snorlax, where I can tank a Muddy Water as well as a Dark Pulse pretty easily, and then go for a Crunch on the Hydreigon, taking it down. The Seismitoad is then going to set up a Rain Dance, which is great because a Quad Effective Seed Bomb can take it down, and we defeat Ghetsis. And I'm leaving for real this time. We then head back to Looker and update him on what happened, and after we fill him in on Ghetsis and in Team Plasma, he says it makes him a little nostalgic. He congratulates us on finishing the mission, but also lets us know that he hasn't heard anything else on Team Kronos. And that's when we're introduced to Lilith, back from her mission, and she lets us know that she's finished off Team Rocket for good. I thought I already did that. Looker then introduced the two of us, but apparently I'm avoiding eye contact because she's so pretty. Looker then says that maybe the two of us should work together. Oh my gosh, but look how shy I am. But I guess that means that the two of us are going to head over to Route 12 over by Lavender Town. While in Lavender Town, we're going to meet up with Mr. Fuji, who's going to give us a Mega Ring, which means we can finally Mega Evolve our Blastoise. He also gives us the 2 Charizard gems, which is awesome. And over on Route 12, where we find our sleeping Snorlax, we find Masquerade once again. And that's when Masquerade reveals his ultimate secret. The only way to awaken a sleeping bear is with the sound of a flute. But wait, we already knew that? Huh, well, listen to this flute in all of its glory. And when he plays the wrong tune on the flute, he pours some soup down the Snorlax's throat, which makes it Gigantamax. Okie dokie, so we're gonna send in Charizard. But with that taken care of, we make our way over to the portal where we meet up with Lilith. And of course, we have to Pokemon battle her, which I guess makes sense. She starts off with Frostlass, and we're gonna send in Charizard. I'm gonna keep Charizard in and decide to Mega Evolve and go for a Dragon Dance on the first turn, especially because this thing outspeeds us as it goes for a Thunderbolt. We're then going to go for a Dragon Claw, which is going to bring this thing down to its Focus Sash, activating its ability Second Wind, which heals it up, but does drop all of its stats. So once we can go for another Dragon Claw, we can successfully take it down. Next out comes Delphox, and I'm going to go for an Air Slash, doing about a third as this thing goes for a Grass Knot, doing barely anything. So we're going to follow up with a Dragon Claw, finishing it off. Next up comes Mawile. So screw it, we're going to go for a Flare Blitz so we can get this thing down to its Second Wind once again as it heals back up, but it's going to lower all of its stats. And that's when it's going to go for a Play Rough, bringing us way down into the red. But screw it, we're going to go for another Flare Blitz, taking the Mawile down this time. But that's also going to KO Charizard. But fortunately, that was also her last Pokemon, so we beat Lilith. So with that taken care of, we head into the wormhole together and find ourselves at Mount Cornet. After fighting through a bunch of Team Plasma Grunts, we're going to find a couple of Team Kronos Grunts, doing what Team Kronos Grunts do best. And after their defeat, they both disappear through portable wormholes, which is unlike anything that Lilith has seen so far. But we need to see how Team Kronos has been messing with history even further and proceed forward. But before we can head up to the top of Mount Cornet, we run into Narcissus again. And when Lilith tells him that we need to get through, he says that he's under orders not to let anybody pass. When Lilith questions exactly what a mercenary trainer is, because that sentence doesn't exactly make sense in the Pokemon world as we know it, and despite the fact he would probably prefer not to, he is, after all, a mercenary trainer. So that means we're gonna have to take Narcissus on. He starts off by sending out Banette and Infernape, and we're gonna send in Frostlass and Charizard. I wanted to hold off assuming this thing might use a fighting move as the Infernape comes in, going for a Thunder Punch, getting me down to about half before I can go for a Dragon Dance. And after the Frostlass and the And after the Frostlass gets hit down into the red and heals up with second wind, Infernape is also down to just about half as well. After we Mega Evolve into Charizard X, it's going to activate something called Draconic Hatred in both of Narcissus' Pokemon, boosting up their attack stats. But we can take down the Infernape no problem, as the Banette knocks the Frostlass down to its Focus Sash and fires off a Shadow Ball, getting it down into the red. Electivire is going to get in next, and it's automatically going to activate this Draconic Hatred ability. And that's when Narcissus heals up the Banette and goes for a Fire Punch on the Frostlass, taking it out. So we're going to go for a Dragon Claw on the Banette, taking it down in one shot. This is going to lead into Zangoose, and Delphox and Draconic Hatred is going to get activated again. They're then both going to double into my Charizard, taking me down before Delphox goes for a Fire Blast on Zangoose. So we're going to go ahead and send in Snorlax. Delphox is then going to get knocked down pretty low, activating Second Wind as it heals back up. Then Delphox is going to go for a Fire Blast, taking out Zangoose, and I'm going to get Electivire and Delphox down really low with an Earthquake before Magmortar comes in. Electivire is then going to Volt Switch out, taking out the Delphox while he sends in his Sneasel. Magmar is then going to go for a Gunk Shot on Snorlax, doing barely anything, but it does get the poison off, and now that there's not a Pokemon on my side of the field, the Earthquake isn't going to hurt any of Lilith's Pokemon. She then sends in her Mawile, and honestly, I'm just going to keep on going for Earthquakes, because I don't think I have a better option here, as an Icicle Crash comes down on the Mawile, and a Gunk Shot is going to hit Snorlax again. Mawile then goes for a Play Rough on Magmar, taking it out as we go for an Earthquake, bringing Mawile and Sneasel both down pretty low, but Mawile's going to heat up because Second Wind. Electivire is going to come back in, and we're going to go for another Earthquake, as the Mawile goes for a Sucker Punch, taking out the Electivire, and an Icicle Crash does barely anything. But going for an Earthquake, we're going to take out Mawile and get Sneasel down pretty low. Sneasel then goes for a Pursuit, taking me down to the red, and we can go for a Rock Slide, taking down the Sneasel, and we defeat Narcissus. And that's when Narcissus shows the fact that he's a mercenary and just decides to leave, and we can continue up Mount Cornet. Lilith also mentions that she trained with Claire, Lance's sister, which seems to set Narcissus off, and also explains his Draconic Hatred ability. And he proclaims never to say that type of Pokemon in front of me again. So this dude hates dragons, for reasons. I'm sure we'll find out later. And after we beat up Mars and Jupiter, we need to get to the important things. And that's when we see Cyrus, the oldest 27-year-old man you have ever seen, standing before Dialga and Palkia. Cyrus then turns to us, saying all the weird, depressing, normal stuff he always says. And that today, all emotion will come to an end. Because after today, he'll be able to recreate this world in his own likeness. And this time, no one can stop him. And Lilith says what I've been thinking for the past 17 years. That is absolutely ridiculous. But if I'm being completely honest, I'm pretty sure that Cyrus wants to create this new world where only he exists. And like a never-ending stasis, because as the oldest 27-year-old man in the entire of Infinity, he'll never age. And I think that's honestly what he's going for. And just before Palkia and Dialga can get to work, Mama Cynthia appears. And she says, "No, Cyrus, you look totally good for your age. You don't need to destroy the world so you're the only person left, therefore the most handsome." And that's when Cynthia lets us know that she'll take care of Cyrus, but Lilith and I need to take care of Palkia and Dialga. And after Cyrus's defeat, Spectra shows himself, expressing his disappointment in Cyrus. Spectra then says that he set up the perfect conditions for Cyrus to achieve his plan, and he still couldn't do it. And it turns out that Spectra's the one responsible for the fact that Giratina never showed up. And apparently Giratina's gonna show up somewhere else, but he doesn't say where. But I'm assuming it's the same place he put Rayquaza. And with a snap of his fingers, Spectra delivers Cyrus to the oblivion that he craves. Spectra then notes that Lilith doesn't show up anywhere in his data, and that she shouldn't even exist in the first place. She's even more out of place than we are. Spectra then warns us not to continue to interfere in his plans, and next time, he'll act accordingly. And I guess technically this is mission accomplished? So let's head back to Looker. But before we can report back to Looker, we run into Vincent yet again. Where as usual, he lets on that he knows a little bit more than he should, asking us if we enjoyed our trip to another region. After all, it's not like you get to travel for free a lot these days. After reporting back to Looker, we meet up with Lilith again. And while Looker calls the mission an overall success, Lilith brings up the point that I've been bringing up like literally every time we've done something. We put out a small fire, but ultimately Team Kronos is still doing what they want to do and probably ultimately making things worse. Looker then tells Lilith to get a little bit of rest because he needs to talk to us about something else. Looker then lets us know that our next mission will be to get one of those Kronos devices from a Kronos grunt. If they're able to pinpoint exactly when and where they can make their own portable wormholes, we're never going to be able to deal with them properly. So our next mission is clear. Find and neutralize a Team Kronos grunt and steal the chromometer or whatever it's called. When we go to heal up at the Pokemon Center, we find Masquerade instead of Nurse Joy. But just before the Masquerade can have his fun, a lass comes in saying how much she loves her precious Eevee, complimenting Nurse Joy on her amazing costume, and says that she'll be back for her beloved Eevee later. Masquerade says he's capable of doing any job. Now watch this demonstration. And after mashing a bunch of buttons on the healing machine, a small explosion and a small fire breaks out, and I think we need to leave. While we continue to attempt to take Looker's advice to rest, we see Ezekiel over by Cerulean Cave. Apparently Ezekiel's already beaten this police officer in a Pokemon battle, but the officer will not move. He insists on doing his job, and that's when Ezekiel summons his Feraligatr and just yeets the police officer out of the way, which is just like super illegal. And if we don't like it, I guess we're gonna have to battle him ourselves. Ezekiel starts off by sending in this Chatot, and we send in Pikachu. It's gonna outspeed us on the first turn, going for a Tailwind, and we're gonna knock it down to its Focus Sash. And on the following turn, Ezekiel's gonna heal up with a Max Potion, and we fire off another Thunderbolt, taking it out. Next up comes Zebstrika, who's gonna go for a Bulk Beat, and getting us down to just 23 HP as I fire off with a Brick Break, getting it down to about half, and this is gonna activate its Toxic Orb. It then goes for an Ice Spinner, taking out our Pikachu. Lucky for me, the Tailwind's already run out, so we're gonna send in Charizard. And after Mega Evolving, to ditch our Flying typing, we're going to go for a Dragon Dance, but not before this thing Stone Edges us down to just 83 HP. Ezekiel's going to use a Max Potion on the following turn, and now that we outspeed, we go for a Dragon Claw, grabbing the Oko. This is going to lead into his Wigglytuff, and going for a Flare Blitz, we could take it down in one shot, but we're also going to take our cells out. So we're going to send in Annihilate instead, and he's going to send in Crobat. So assuming a flying move, we're going to swap, instead sending in Snorlax as it goes for a Thunderbolt. And I'm pretty sure literally every single one of his Pokemon have guts, and after hitting us with a Hurricane, we're going to do just over 50% with a Rock Slide. It follows up with a Sludge Bomb, grabbing the KO on us, which means we're going to send in Blastoise now. And after it goes for another Hurricane, we can take it out with a Scald, which is going to lead into a Cramorant, who apparently has Drizzle and Thunder, KOing Blastoise. So I guess we're going to send in Venusaur. It goes for another Thunder, barely doing anything, but it does get the paralysis off, so we're going to go for a Leech Seed. Knowing this thing quad resists me, I don't really have a good option, but it keeps insisting on using Thunder, so I'm going to use that to my advantage, going for a Sludge Bomb, getting it down just below half. And once it fires off another Thunder, we're unfortunately paralyzed, and now the Leech Seed's got it into a good KO range. And on the following turn, we can take the thing down. He's going to send in his final Pokemon, this Fire Feraligatr, and I'm going to hope that I can stay alive for just one turn as it goes for a Dragon Dance, but we are paralyzed, which means when it goes for an Earthquake, it's going to knock us down super low. But fortunately for us, we just barely stay alive at 55 HP, getting it down just below half. It's going to follow up going for a Close Combat, KOing us. So in comes Annihilate. And as this thing goes for a Flare Blitz, it's going to KO our final Pokemon, and we get beat by Ezekiel. But luckily for us, it doesn't seem to matter whether we win or lose here as he enters Cerulean Cave. After making our way through Cerulean Cave, we find Ezekiel right where you'd normally find Mewtwo. And he lets us know that while Mewtwo is an incredibly impressive Pokemon, he would never use a Pokemon that he didn't create himself. But Mewtwo could be an interesting template for him to base his new Pokemon off of. And it looks like it's going to be up to us to stop Ezekiel yet again. He starts off by sending in Fearow, and we're going to send in Snorlax. The Fearow goes for a Facade on the first turn, and we're going to throw a bunch of rocks at it, getting him down pretty low. After using his first full restore, we miss a Rock Slide, and then he swaps out, sending in Durant as we do about 50% to him. Assuming a superpower, I'm going to swap out into Charizard, and he goes for an X-Scissor. Knowing a Durant can't really do anything to Charizard, we're going to Mega Evolve as he goes for an Iron Head, and we can go for a Dragon Dance. We're then going to go for another Dragon Dance because I assume that Ezekiel's going to heal up, so now that we're at +2 attack and speed, first we're going to go for an Air Slash doing about 60%, getting the flinch, and then another one for the KO. Ambi Bomb comes in next. And we're going to outspeed, going for a Dragon Claw, grabbing the KO, which is going to lead into Noivern, who we obviously outspeed now that we're at +2. Once Pyroar comes in, we can still outspeed this bad boy, taking it out in just one shot, which is going to lead back into his Fearow, who also goes down. He's finally going to send in his Ace for Alligator, and we're going to go for another Dragon Claw, grabbing ourselves the Yoko, and Mega Charizard X destroys Ezekiel. Ezekiel thinks it would actually be a better and more funny idea if we caught Mewtwo, so he gives us a bunch of Premier Balls and challenges us to capture Mewtwo ourselves. And I guess, sure, why not catch Mewtwo? And after capturing Mewtwo, Lilith gives us a call, where she wants us to meet up with her over by Route 11. She says that it's urgent. Could it be a date? Is Red finally going to fall in love? Once we do meet up with Lilith over on Route 11, we find that she's with a Silphco scientist. Apparently while investigating the wormhole, this guy's colleague just went through. So Lilith called us for backup so we could go in there together, and not only do whatever we need to do to close up the wormhole, but also save this Sylph scientist so he's not stuck on the other side. Lilith also knows that apparently we've already met up with this guy a few times before, so there's only a handful of people it could possibly be. So once we head in together, we find ourselves in Moss Deep City. So I guess we're back in Hoenn, and when we can't figure out what to do in Moss Deep City, we head to the place that we know Red likes the most, Pokemon gyms, because there's nothing that can sate his appetite for badges. But it turns out that the gym leaders aren't Tate and Liza, it are these alternative versions of Archie and Maxie. But just before the battle can begin and Daddy can get his fix, in comes Lilith. And then that's when Archie challenges me and my girlfriend to a Pokemon battle. And Maxie says as long as these two are more respectful than the last guy, which catches Lilith's attention, because of course, there shouldn't have been another guy. No one else would possibly want to battle gym leaders. And I guess it's time for us to take the two of them on in a battle. Also, she didn't deny that we were boyfriend-girlfriend. Anyways, they're going to send in Wailord and Claydol, and we're going to send in Snorlax and Frostlass. The Frostlass is going to start off, we're going for an Ice Beam on Claydol, who's then going to fire back with an Earthquake against all of us, and the Wailord is going to go for a Water Spout, bringing us down pretty low. This is going to activate Second Wind on the Frostlass, healing it back up to full but lowering all its defenses, and Snorlax is going to go for a Crunch on the Claydol, bringing it down quite low. Archie is then going to heal up his Pokemon as the Frostlass fires off a Shadow Ball at the Claydol, bringing it down to about half again as Wailord goes for a Scald, bringing Frostlass down low and getting the burn off, and we're going to bring it back down into the red. The Frostlass is then going to go for a Destiny Bond as the Claydol goes for a Psychic, taking it and the Frostlass down. Wailord is then going to go for another Water Spout, taking us down pretty low as we go for a Crunch, doing about a third. Lilith's then going to send in her Delphox because she's programmed to, and then Swampert comes out on the other side. Swampert is then going to Mega Evolve into Mega Swampert, and Delphox is going to go for a Grass Knot on the Wailord, KOing it instantly. Swampert is then going to go for an Earthquake, KOing the both of us, but just kidding, Delphox has Second Wind, I keep on forgetting she has that. But Snorlax does go down. So we're going to go ahead and send in Venusaur, while Slowking comes in on their end. The Delphox goes for a Calm Mind on the following turn, getting its special defense back to normal, and Venusaur is going to go for a Giga Drain on the Swampert, taking it way down into the red. Swampert then goes for an Ice Punch on Venusaur, bringing it down pretty low as Slowking goes for a Scald, taking Delphox down low as well. Delphox goes for a Grass Knot, finishing off the Swampert, and when we go for a Giga Drain, we can do just under 50% of the Slowking. A Scald then comes in, taking Delphox down, and then they send in Flygon as their next Pokemon. Flygon then goes for an Earthquake, getting Mawile down, activating its Second Wind while we get down pretty low as well. And we're going to go for a Giga Drain on Slowking, finishing it off, healing ourselves back up just a little bit. As Mawile goes for a Beat Up, doing barely anything, Steelix is going to come in next. The Flygon is then going to go for another Earthquake, bringing me down really low while KOing the Mawile, and Venusaur goes for a Giga Drain, bringing Steelix down low as well. And then once the Steelix also goes for an Earthquake, down goes Venusaur. So we're going to go ahead sending in Blastoise, who is our last Pokemon, as the Flygon is going to go for a Dragon Claw. We can take down the Steelix with the Scald. Flygon is then going to fire back with an Earthquake, and we can go for a quad-effective Ice Beam, taking down the Flygon and defeating Archie and Maxie. And then Maxie says something very interesting, that the last person that beat them also refused a badge. So it's probably just Ezekiel. And in another twist of the dimensions getting all jumbled up, it turns out that Steven and Wallace are the Magma and Aqua leaders. And after pushing Lilith out of the way and saying they're gonna take care of me, out comes Ezekiel. He says he bets we didn't see him coming, but I literally just said that like 40 seconds ago. Ezekiel comments that he was hoping this would be a cool reality, but after beating up those two bad gym leaders, he sees these two bad, evil team leaders, and overall, it's just kind of a bad day. Ezekiel says he's bored of being in this reality and just wants to go home. And Lilith lets him know that the only way for us to be able to leave is probably to beat these two in a Pokemon battle. So I guess that means we're gonna double battle with Ezekiel as they send in Scizor and Kingdra, we send in Snorlax and Garchomp. The Garchomp's gonna go for an Outrage against the Scizor, as the Kingdra goes for an Outrage on me, which they both should have outraged the opposite ones, and then Scizor's gonna go for a Swords Dance, while Snorlax goes for a Seed Bomb on the Kingdra, doing about a third. On the following turn, they're gonna heal up Scizor, and then another Outrage is gonna come in doing some decent damage to Scizor, and Kingdra is gonna continue going for an Outrage, but this time it's gonna go for Garchomp, taking it down. And once we go for an Earthquake, we can take them both down pretty low, which is gonna lead into his Malamar. Wallace and Steven are going to take another opportunity to heal up yet again as the Kingdra's going to come in, taking Snorlax down. Then going for a Jaw Lock, the Kingdra gets taken out. So we're going to safely send in Charizard as Wallace and Steven send in Aggron. We're then going to Mega Evolve Charizard and they're going to evolve Aggron as a Bullet Punch comes in against the Malamar, doing some decent damage, and we can set up a Dragon Dance. Malamar then goes for a Hammer Arm on the Aggron, and since it doesn't have Contrary, its speed actually goes down. On the following turn, we go for a Flare Blitz, taking down the Scizor, and the Aggron is going to go for an Earthquake, taking us both down pretty low, as a Jaw Lock is going to go against the Aggron, not doing a whole heck of a lot of damage. Wallace and Steven then send in Typhlosion, and we're going to go for another Flare Blitz, this time on an Aggron, taking it out. Typhlosion then goes for an extra Sentry, taking us out, and a Jaw Lock on the Typhlosion is going to take it down about half. So we're going to send in Blastoise next, and they're going to send in Melodic. Typhlosion goes for a Flamethrower on the Malamar, taking it down super low, and then when Melodic goes for an Ice Beam, they can take it down. But we go for a Scald on Typhlosion, KOing it, which is going to lead into them sending Gyarados, and then Ezekiel sending in Abomasnow. Abomasnow then goes for a Frenzy Plant, taking the Melodic down super low as it fires off an Ice Beam against us, and then Gyarados goes for a Bounce, so we miss it. But the Melodic is then going to go for a Scald, burning Abomasnow. Gyarados uses Bounce, getting it down super low, and we can fire off a Dark Pulse against Melodic, taking it out. And the leftovers on Abomasnow are going to keep it just healthy enough to not get taken out by the burn. The Abomasnow then actually connects with a Sheer Cold, KOing their final Pokemon, and we defeat Steven and Wallace. And with Team Aqua and Magma defeated, Steven points out what Lilith had said: once we beat them, we can go home. So they decide to withdraw, so that way they can plan their next offensive once we're not here. So with that, we decide to leave and head back to Kanto. When we get back through the portal, Lilith says she wants to say something quick to Ezekiel, who says she has 10 seconds. And just as it sounds as though she's about to offer him a job, he says time's up and then leaves. So I guess we need to go back to Looker. But before we can even head back to Cerulean City, Looker lets us know that there's been an opening over by Mount Moon on the Pewter City side, so I guess that's where we're heading next. As we start making our way back through Mount Moon, we run into Everett, who just wants to randomly challenge us to a Pokemon battle. Okie dokie. He starts off with Ratoria, and we're going to send in Snorlax. He's going to go for a Zen Headbutt, doing barely anything to us, and we're going to go for an Earthquake, scoring a decent hit. Ratoria's going to go for another Zen Headbutt, and we can go for another Earthquake, getting it down to about a third. Once again, it's going to do the exact same thing, until eventually we're going to get it down super low, which is going to prompt Everett to heal him back up. But after we score a crit and get him down super low, he's going to swap out, sending in Aquaria, where we do a lot less damage. It's then going to fire off a Thunderbolt, getting us down to about a third, and we're going to go for a Seed Bomb, getting it down just below half. He's then going to pivot again, sending Ratoria back in as we go for another Seed Bomb, getting this thing down super low. Where he's going to heal up again. Oh, let's fast forward a bit, shall we? We're going to swap out, sending in Pikachu, as Ratoria goes for another Zen Headbutt, and after going back and forth with Pikachu for a couple of rounds, we can take it out with a few Thunderbolts. This is going to lead into him sending in Bagaro, who when we go for a Thunderbolt will get it down super low and a Dragon Claw takes us down, but not before we get it paralyzed. So we're going to send in Charizard, and after missing an Air Slash, it takes itself out with its Life Orb. So when Aquaria comes back in, now we're going to Mega Evolve and go for a Dragon Dance to try to boost ourselves up a bit. And once it goes for a Thunderbolt, it gets us to about half, and we can take it out with a Dragon Claw. In next comes Ancrillair, and we're going to go for a Dragon Claw yet again, and we're going to grab ourselves the Oko on this thing, which is going to lead into a Beta Girafarig. And once we take care of that, everything has one Pokemon remaining, which is going to be Beta Latias, who we take down super low on the first hit, and it hits us back, getting us down to just 21 HP. But one more attack scores the KO, and we defeat Evereth. After testing us, Evereth finally figures out why we keep on going into other dimensions and fighting all these people and potentially ruining the future. It's because we really enjoy Pokemon training. And that's when he wants us to follow him back to his cruiser, which is a machine that he uses across universes, and I wonder if it's bigger on the inside than the outside. And apparently he's designed it using technology from several different universes. After years of researching, he finally developed the Astra, which was a crystal that allowed him to travel to parallel universes. And on his first trip, there was someone that he trusted, someone who he shared his formula with. And after that person erased his memories, they ordered for his execution, and he barely had enough time to escape. And while he didn't lose the Astra itself, they were clearly able to reverse engineer his work with the formula, and now they're causing chaos throughout the multiverse. And by the time he had gotten back to his universe, so much time had passed that everyone he knew and loved had died. But through this grief and the technological advancements made in his new timeline, he was able to build this. And he also discovered that somebody was ripping apart space-time. His initial trip was bad, but he calculated the risk. But at the rate in which things are falling apart, someone must be purposefully tearing everything apart as they travel. So Evereth's new mission is clear. Evereth finally adds that when he finally got to our own dimension, the Astra Crystal not only broke, but its fragments are scattered across random universes. So here's what he's asking us. For his help recovering the pieces of the Astra Crystal so he can repair it, and putting an end to the one who's behind all this. Which is like $5 at Spectra. It'd be great if it was Masquerade. But yes, I accept. And before sending us back to Mount Moon to finish up our mission, he lets us know. May the Force be with you. Hello there! After talking with Evereth, we're going to make our way back over to Mount Moon where we can finally head out on our mission, where we're going to find ourselves at the Kalos Pokeball Factory. And after fighting our way through a combination of Team Flare and Team Chronos grunts, we find ourselves Goliath and David at the back of the Pokeball Factory, and now we need to take the two of them on in a double battle. They start off with Marowak and Golurk, and we're going to send in Charizard and Blastoise. I am immediately going to swap Charizard out, sending in Snorlax, as the Marowak goes for a Retaliate, and we go for a Scald, taking it down in one shot. Golurk goes for a Stone Edge, missing us, and Delamise comes in next. Blastoise is then going to go for an Ice Beam on Delamise, getting it down to about half as Golurk fires off an Earthquake, doing some decent damage all around, and an Energy Ball is going to come in on Blastoise, getting him down to the red. But a Seed Bomb is going to also come in, taking Golurk down pretty low. They're going to swap out, sending in Runegrigus as we're going to go for another Ice Beam, doing about 50% again, and luckily getting the freeze off, and Golurk is starting to go for a Phantom Force. Blastoise is then going to go for a Scald on the Runegrigus, taking it down as a Phantom Force comes in, KOing Blastoise, and a Crunch KOs Golurk. Delamise then comes back in, so we send Venusaur in on our side, and they're going to send in Chandelure. So I'm going to swap out, sending in Charizard instead, as a Chandelure is going to go for a Shadow Ball on Charizard, and a Power Whip on Snorlax takes it down. So in comes Annihilate, and after they heal up the Delamise, I'm going to Mega Evolve and go for an Air Slash. But not before Chandelure sets up a substitute, and we go for a Rage Fist, taking out that substitute. And Delamise gets knocked down all the way into the red. They're then going to heal Delamise up on the following turn, as a Shadow Ball is going to come in, KOing Charizard, and we're going to go for another Rage Fist on Chandelure, taking it down. So we're going to go ahead and send in Pikachu, and they're going to send in their Aegislash. Aegislash goes for a King Shield, but that's fine because I don't plan on hitting it, as we go for a Thunderbolt on Delamise and a Rage Fist, getting it down super low as the Delamise goes for a Power Rip, KOing Pikachu. So we're going to send in our final Pokemon, Venusaur, Annihilate scores a huge hit on Aegislash, and we go for a Sludge Bomb, taking out the Delamise as the Aegislash goes and sets up a Substitute. We're then going to go for a Rage Fist, taking down the Substitute, and Venusaur follows up with an Earthquake. We can take down the Aegislash, and we defeat David and Goliath. After the battle, Goliath immediately takes off, but before David disappears himself, he shows us exactly what we're looking for, a Chronos Bracelet. And he gives it to us in celebration of our victory, and because he's looking forward to battling us again real soon. On our way back over to check in with Looker and let him know that we managed to get ourselves a Chronos Bracelet, Lilith says she has something important to discuss with us and wants us to meet over by Route 25 by Bill's house. And if you've ever watched any of my other videos, you of course know that Bill gained access to Clefairy's attractability and seduced us with boat tickets. So why does she want to meet at my ex-boyfriend's house? We meet up with Lilith and Basil over by Bill's house, where she lets us know that Looker's been taken in for questioning. Apparently somebody tipped off some other higher-ups at the International Police about D-Squad and what we've been doing with all these gates. And where there's information leaks, there's Vincent. Vincent says that we must be as stupid as we are attractive if we really think that we were the only ones investigating these ultra wormholes. And Bill's Clefairy pheromones must be having a lingering effect on the general area of Route 25. He then continuously calls Looker incompetent, which launches Basil into action, but only before Lilith stops him. Vincent then questions why we go into the wormholes in the first place, since once we go in, there's no guarantee we're gonna come out. And he seems satisfied with Lilith's answer when she ultimately says it's altruistic. And this is when things are gonna start getting a little spicy. It turns out that Looker hasn't existed at all in any records before 2 years ago. And additionally, his file over at the International Police Department was forged. The man known as Looker doesn't exist, which only continues to show the fact that he's actually just Doctor Who in disguise. Lilith decides that now it's time to let Vincent in on exactly what we're doing. And while Vincent agrees that that makes sense as to why we're following around Looker, have we ever stopped to consider what we might be doing to these other multiverses that we're going into? Just like how I pointed out, how we haven't run into Lucas or Brandon or May, any of the other protagonists from any of the games, we're acting in their place. That's definitely not normal. And for all we know, our actions to try to save our universe are damning these other universes, which is apparently something that Lilith and Basil had never considered. And that's when Lilith does what she likes to do best, offer this guy a job, to which he immediately turns down and then challenges us to a Pokemon battle. So I guess that's happening now. Vincent starts off with Tangrowth and we're going to send in Charizard. On the first turn, we're going to Mega Evolve and then go for a Dragon Dance. And the Tangrowth is going to go for a Sludge Bomb, doing a decent amount of damage to us. On the following turn, we're going to set up a second Dragon Dance because I'm hoping I can just OHKO all of his Pokemon, as he then goes for an Earthquake, getting us down pretty low. So it's time for us to strike back, going for a +2 Dragon Claw. And Tangrowth is so chunky it doesn't quite work, but luckily he goes for a knockoff instead of an Earthquake. And after Vincent heals up twice, we can go for a couple of more Dragon Claws, eventually bringing the Tangrowth down. Next up is going to come his Dragonite, and we can outspeed, but he goes for an extreme speed, activating his custom ability Double or Nothing, increasing his defense. So we're going to go ahead and send in Blastoise, and Dragonite's going to take this opportunity to go for a Dragon Dance of his own, and we can go for an Ice Beam, taking him way down into the red, but not quite getting the KO, as he's going to fire off another extreme speed, doing over 50% to us before we take him out. Up next is going to come an Espeon, who's going to go for a Psychic, which we can barely tank, and we go for a Dark Pulse, getting it down super low. The Double or Nothing ability is going to increase the Espeon speed, and it's going to go for a Shadow Ball, KOing us. So it looks like this Double or Nothing ability is basically Moody. So we're going to send in Snorlax as he goes for a Psychic, and we can fire back with a Crunch, KOing. Next up is going to come Bisharp, who's going to go for a Sucker Punch on us, scoring a massive critical hit, and we can go for an Earthquake, doing about 50%. The Bisharp then goes for another Sucker Punch, taking us down. So we're going to send in Annihilate, and for some reason it decides not to go for a Sucker Punch this time, and we can take it out with a close combat, and we defeat Vincent. Lilith once again offers this guy a job, but Vincent decides to take this opportunity and leave, once again hammering home that we really have no idea what the repercussions of our actions truly could be. Lilith decides that our best course of action next is to get the League to officially endorse Looker, and hopefully we can uncover who he truly is and get back to doing what's important, beating up other people in other dimensions. Lilith then says she'll go talk to Claire in Blackthorn City. Basil's gonna head out to Viridian City to talk to Blue, which I think is weird considering he's my best friend. and we're left to try to figure out who the chief really is. And she says if we know anybody who's good at computers and can help us break into the police mainframe, then that would be a good place to start. So I guess that I'm gonna go hang out with Ezekiel then. We head over to Silphco because the only person besides Bill that we even know owns a computer is Ezekiel. After explaining the situation to Ezekiel, he agrees, but only if we'll transfer the data we have on our Pokedex to him. To which of course I agree, because if that means he can get stronger, I can have more better fights. Because Red, of course, is a shonen protagonist. While Ezekiel's hacking the police system, he makes a note that whatever added Looker's information to the database was not of this world. A hack like this should have left some kind of trace, but it's not something that our computers recognized. But he quickly fixes things, making sure that Looker looks like he's been here all along, and we hand over our Pokedex so he can make a copy. And looks like this mission is accomplished. Before we leave Silphco, we got a call from Lilith, who got a call from Looker saying that everything's been cleared up, so I guess our mission indeed was accomplished. But now we gotta hurry back over to Cerulean City because Looker has a new mission for us. After heading back over to Cerulean City, we meet up with Looker and the team. And because of the records that Ezekiel was able to put into the system, making it look like this was all a legitimate operation, we've now officially become legitimate, and we'll be able to travel anywhere in the region we need. We can then let Looker know that we finally got our hands on one of Team Kronos' transportation bracelets, and Looker just hopes that we'll be able to use that bracelet to transport not just myself, but Lilith and Basil as well. But first we need to try to figure out how it even works in the first place. But before the three of us strap on that bracelet and go Arceus knows where, Looker asks Lilith and I to head over to Saffron City because they're looking to reopen the train station and they want somebody to be there just in case a wormhole opens. So all we need to do is go on a romantic train ride to Goldenrod, hit up the department store, and then come back. And with a mission sounding so simple, I can't wait to see how it doesn't go according to plan. While on our romantic train ride, Lilith asked if we really think we'll be able to stop Team Kronos. And even if we do, have we already caused irreparable damage to the multiverse? And ultimately, do we think we're doing the right thing? Of course I say yes, because we're fighting strong guys and beating up bad guys. What could possibly be better? But just as our train begins to approach cruising speed, there's a flash of light, and we end up in Goldenrod City. Everything's totally normal and totally fine. There's nothing weird going on here. I certainly don't think anything looks off, but it is weird that we got here so quickly. Anywho, once we step outside, Lilith asks if we want to have a Pokemon battle for old time's sake, and I'm totally down. Lilith starts off by sending in Frostlass, and we're gonna send in Charizard, and I love that these sprites look like Gen 2 sprites. We're immediately gonna Mega Evolve Charizard. As this thing goes to fire off a Shadow Ball against us, doing just a bit of damage, we can set up a Dragon Dance. We're then gonna go for a Flare Blitz, knocking this thing down to its Focus Sash before it eventually heals back up with Second Wind, and it fires off a Psychic, doing quite a bit of damage to us. On the next turn, we're gonna go for a +1 Dragon Claw, grabbing the KO, which is gonna lead into Meganium. Then going for another Flare Blitz, we can outcut the Meganium, but we're now down to just 2 HP as a Musharna comes in. So we're just gonna go for a Dragon Claw, getting it down pretty low as it sets up a Future Sight. Lilith is then going to use a full restore as we go for another Dragon Claw, getting it down pretty low before she heals up with a full restore. And going for another Dragon Claw, we're going to get it down into the red before the Future Sight takes us out. So we're going to go ahead and send in Pikachu and finish it off with a Thunderbolt. Melodic comes in next, and I love these sprite designs. But firing off a Thunderbolt, we can quickly grab the Yoko on the Melodic, which is going to lead into her Mawile. It goes for a Sucker Punch, doing some good damage to us, and we manage to get the paralysis off while going for a Brick Break, doing about half. Another Sucker Punch comes in, getting us into the red, and we can go for a Thunderbolt, grabbing the KO, defeating Lilith. Lilith then lets us know that she should definitely introduce us to Claire, who's a good friend of hers who trains her over in Blackthorn City, but I'm pretty sure I've already beaten Claire. I know Claire. She lets us know that she's gonna go heal up, and we should probably do the same. We head over to the gym because of course we do. We're red. We love battling for badges. But it turns out that Ezekiel's here insulting Whitney because apparently he just needs to insult literally everybody who's a representative of the Pokemon League, period. I really hope he doesn't realize that I'm the champion. And this is where Ezekiel challenges us to a battle in Whitney's gym without asking her. And apparently now we have to face off against Ezekiel. He starts off by sending in Electros, and we're gonna send in Charizard. And we're gonna swap out, sending in Venusaur as the Electros goes for a Hydro Cannon. I try to go for an Earthquake since none of Ezekiel's Pokemon ever have their appropriate ability, but apparently this one actually has Levitate. So on the following turn, it's gonna use a Special Attack X, and we're gonna go for a Leech Seed. Then following up with a Giga Drain, we do about a quarter, and this thing's going to fire off a Thunder, doing some pretty massive damage because of the X special attack. We're going to go for another Giga Drain, getting it down to the red and getting some ship healing in. After we go back and forth for a couple more turns, Ezekiel's going to use his second full restore, and we continue to trade back and forth for just a little while until eventually Venusaur is going to get taken down. So we're going to go ahead and send in Charizard, who's going to Mega Evolve and then go for a Dragon Dance. And this is when the Electros is going to hit us with another Thunder, doing a massive amount of damage and gets the paralysis off. But we still outspeed it, and we go for an Air Slash by accident, not even getting the KO, but I guess that kind of works out because the Leech Seed takes it out and we get some healing in. And this is when Flygon comes in, goes for a close combat, and KOs us. So we're going to send in Blastoise, as it goes for another close combat, doing a little bit of damage to us, but now that it's at -2 special defense, a quad effective Ice Beam is more than enough. This is then going to lead into Volcarona, who's going to go for a Bug Buzz, doing some pretty great damage to us, and we can go for a Scald, KOing it immediately. Next up comes Spiritomb, and we're going to outspeed, go for a Dark Pulse, doing about a third as he goes for an Iron Head. On the following turn, we're going to go for a Scald, finishing it off, which is going to lead into his Steelix. So we can use Scald on it and grab ourselves the Yoko, which is going to lead into his Fire for Alligator, who we also outspeed, and Scald doing about 50%. On the next turn, it goes for an Extreme Speed, KOing us, activating its Moxie. So we're going to send in Pikachu, hopefully we can outspeed, but it goes for another Extreme Speed, getting us down super low, but luckily we can withstand it, go for a Thunderbolt, KO it, defeating Ezekiel. After the battle, Ezekiel says he'll figure out some other way to kill time while we wait for the train to come back, and nobody seems to notice that we are in Game Boy Color. And now Whitney, looking for a flash of inspiration, challenges us to a Pokemon battle. She starts off with Blissey, and we're going to send in Charizard. So we're going to Mega Evolve right away, that way we can go for a Dragon Dance, hopefully just setting up and sweeping her team. The Blissey's going to use a Thunder Wave, which is incredibly annoying, but I can use this opportunity to try to set up a second one, but it doesn't work because I'm paralyzed. And on the next turn, I'm paralyzed too, as this thing goes for another Seismic Toss, getting me down to about 50%. Now with a second Dragon Dance, the Blissey's going to go for yet another Seismic Toss, getting us down to about a quarter, but we can KO it in one shot, leading into Tauros, who's obviously going to outspeed us because of the paralysis, KOing us. So we're going to do what I probably should have done in the first place, and that's switch to Annihilate, and then immediately go for a close combat, KOing the Tauros. Next out comes Clefable, who we can outspeed, go for a close combat, and get it down pretty low. The Clefable then sets up a Stealth Rock, before Whitney uses a full restore to heal, and we go for an Ice Punch, doing about a third. I now hope this thing's low enough that a close combat will KO, and it doesn't as we get it down into the red, and Clefable goes for a knockoff, knocking off our Life Orb. Which, honestly, now that we've gotten hit so many times, might be a blessing in disguise as we go for a Rage Fist, doing a massive amount of damage. And with one more Rage Fist, we grab the KO. This is going to lead into Girafarig, who we can outspeed, glowing for another close combat, getting this thing way down into the red as it fires off an Earthquake for the KO. So we're going to go ahead and send in Pikachu, and after just one shot, we take down Girafarig, leading into Wigglytuff. And after we go for a Thunderbolt on it, we score a crit and the Yoko, leading into her ace Miltank. And once we go for another Thunderbolt, we can get it down pretty low once Whitney sets up a Toxic. And with just one more Thunderbolt, we KO Whitney's final Pokemon, and we defeat her. After exiting the gym, we run into Lilith, who's apparently been trying to call us like forever, but sweetie, I was out there getting badges. Apparently she tried to go to the radio tower, but a Team Rocket grunt wouldn't let her in. Yes, that's right, Team Rocket. She says she's going to try to call for backup, and we should see if there's anybody nearby who can help us out with dealing with Team Rocket. We find Ezekiel in the underground, probably getting like a bunch of haircuts or something, and we let him know about Team Rocket, but after saying he's not interested, we offer him what he desires most. One of our D-Squad armbands. That way he can freely roam around the Kanto region. And even though Lilith literally offered him a job, which would have come with said armband that he said no to, he says yes to us. So we let him know to meet up with Lilith over at the Pokemon Center, and we'll be right there. Head back over to the gym and let Whitney know about the situation, and she agrees to go meet back up at the Pokemon Center as well. Well, 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 look who else got sucked through a wormhole. He doubles down saying that he's not going to help us, we go to walk away, and that's when he asks us if we agree to pay him what's due, then he'll agree to lend us a hand, and he's asking for $50,000. Yet he's also going to challenge us to a battle, and if we lose, It's gonna be 100. And now it's time for us to take on Vincent, who starts off with Tangrowth, and we start off with Charizard. We're gonna Mega Evolve on the first turn and go for a Dragon Dance, because of course we are. And the Tangrowth is gonna go for a knockoff, which obviously won't do anything to us. It's gonna continue trying to hit us, and after poisoning us with a Sludge Bomb and we get to +3 with Dragon Dances, we're down to just about half. And we're gonna go for an Air Slash, doing about 50%, as we get knocked down to barely anything with another knockoff, and we can take down the Tangrowth, but now we're dead. So much for all that planning. So in we send Pikachu, and he sent in Dragonite. We're gonna go for a Thunderbolt on the initial turn, doing a good amount of damage, but an Earthquake KOs us. In next is gonna come our Blastoise, as Vincent uses a full restore, and we miss our Ice Beam. The Dragonite then goes for an Earthquake, doing some decent damage to us, but a quad effective Ice Beam brings this thing down way into the red. And then after Vincent heals up with a full restore, we can go for another Ice Beam, bringing it back down into the red again. It's then going to go for a Dragon Dance for reasons even dumber than when I went for one, and we can take it out. Next out comes Espeon, and I've always loved the Gen 2 Espeon sprite. As it goes for a Psychic, we can fire off a Dark Pulse, doing some good damage. On the following turn, it misses its Shadow Ball, and we can go for another Dark Pulse KOing. This is going to lead into Jellicent, who I always feel like this sprite looks like it has a mustache, and we go for a Dark Pulse, doing a decent amount of damage, and they go for a Hex, doing barely anything. Firing off another Dark Pulse is going to bring this thing down to the red, as the Jellicent decides to go for a Recovery. For the next couple of turns, we're going to trade back and forth with this thing, eventually going for a Toxic on us, getting us down to just 16 HP, and we can fire off one more Dark Pulse for the KO, taking both of us down at once. Next, we're going to send in Annihilate, as he sends in Bisharp. We can outspeed, go for a close combat, and quickly grab ourselves the KO, defeating Vincent. Lets us know he'll meet us out in front of the radio tower, so I guess we gotta meet back up with Lilith and the others in the Pokemon Center. Meeting back up with Lilith and the rest of the team, she goes to give everybody the rundown, but Vincent interrupts her, letting her know we already explained everything, and all he's interested in what the plan is. And this is when Vincent decides to take over, since he's the only adult here. And reluctantly, Lilith agrees. And here's Vincent's ultimate master plan. Bust down the front door and beat up all the bad guys. And Ezekiel loves this idea. And I gotta say, I'm loving it too. But with that, the team disperses, and we're ready to take Goldenrod Radio Tower head on. Prepare yourselves, Team Rocket. And after fighting our way to the top of the Rocket Tower, we find Archer and Ariana facing off against Lilith. And this is when Lilith accidentally confirms that we're in the past. She says last time that they tried this, it didn't work, so why would it try this time? To which Archer responds, we haven't done this before. And now it's time for us to face off against the two Rocket Administrators. They send out Vileplume and Magmar, and we're going to send in Frostlass and Charizard. After Mega Evolving right away, Frostlass goes for a Psychic on the Vileplume, doing some decent damage, as the Magmar goes for a Fire Blast on Frostlass, getting it down to its Focus Sash. Somehow I'm slower than all these other Pokemon in the field, and then we go instead and set up a Dragon Dance, as the Vileplume puts the Frostlass to sleep. Lilith's then going to swap out, setting in Roshana, and we're going to go for a Dragon Claw and Magmar, grabbing the KO. Vileplume is then going to use a Synthesis to heal up, and Arbok's going to come in next. Going for a Dragon Claw on the Arbok, we can quickly KO it, no problem. And the Vileplume's going to go for a Sludge Bomb, as a Dazzling Gleam comes off the Marshana, and I don't know why it didn't use a Psychic move, but I guess that's besides the point. Anyways, the next Team Rocket Pokemon out is Houndoom, and I'm going to go for another Dragon Claw on the Houndoom, grabbing the KO, as a Sludge Bomb is going to knock us down pretty low, and Marshana sets up a Future Sight. In next comes Crobat, who's going to outspeed us, go for a Brave Bird, and KO Charizard, and then Vileplume's going to shoot off an Energy Ball, doing some decent damage, and a Dazzling Gleam is going to come in, going for the Crobat, doing barely anything. I decide to send an Annihilate by accident, as the Crobat goes for a Brave Bird, getting us down super low, but we can fire back with an Ice Punch, grabbing the KO. But unfortunately, our Life Orb takes ourselves down. Marshana and Vileplume trade back and forth a little bit, and ultimately do very little damage, but then the Future Sight takes out the Vileplume. I decide to send in Pikachu, and then they send in their final Pokemon, Honchkrow. It goes for a Sucker Punch on the Marshana, which it can avoid, and we can go for a Thunderbolt, grabbing the KO, defeating Archer and Ariana. Ariana then tries to call up all available units to assist them in the top of the radio tower, but to no avail, because all the grunts have already been taken care of. And then on our way back to Kanto, on the train tracks once again, a flash of light, and we return back to our normal graphics. Lilith then comments on how it's weird we got back and forth so quickly a second time. Lilith then gets a call from Looker confirming exactly what we've been talking about all along. We clearly went through a portal and then closed it on the way out. Lilith then lets us know that apparently somebody stole the transporter that we got from David. So I guess we need to make our way back to Cerulean City to figure out an alternative to our plan. We get back to Cerulean City, we run into Everett again, and apparently he's the one that stole the transponder in the first place. He said that he wanted the chance to analyze it before we did something to ruin it, and it turns out that the device that powers it is a miniaturized version of the Astra Stone, which confirms that the two of us are fighting the same person. He then reluctantly gives it back to us, warning us once again of the dangers of messing with the multiverse. But ultimately, we can do whatever we want to do with it. And we will. We meet back up with Looker and the rest of the team down in the basement, where Looker is apologizing for losing the transponder in the first place, and that's when we show him that we found it. Totally convenient. Looker lets us know that we're running out of time and that we need to activate the transponder, but he wants to make sure that we understand what activating it means. We don't know what will happen, and we don't know how we'll get back. Are we willing to take that risk? After we're transported to what looks like a basement, we hear some screaming coming from down the hall, and that's where a guy that looks a lot like Everett but just a little bit more deranged comes running at us. And it sounds like somebody named Madame Serena is chasing him. He then grabs our transporter, makes a couple of adjustments, and zips the four of us out of there, and now we're in a room that looks a lot like Everett's lab, which I imagine is much bigger on the inside than on the outside. He then makes a comment about how old our transporter looks and that we must be from another dimension. Lilith asks how he's so sure of that, and he says that we were somehow in the basement of one of the most important buildings in the Luck Zone. After Totally Not Everett tells us to leave, and we refuse, he threatens to just transport us to a random dimension. Then when asking for help, he says he won't share his infinity energy with us because it's a very scarce resource, which given the name, I would have thought it was pretty plentiful. But then he hears the name Team Kronos, which is a name that he recognizes. Lilith then explains that Team Kronos has been stealing legendary Pokemon from across a bunch of different multiverses and we need to do something to stop them. And that's when she shows her Mawile, to which this guy calls it a weapon. The mystery man then gives us the choice. If we leave this Mawile with him, he'll teach us how to use the transporters and send us home. And reluctantly, Lilith agrees. After saying goodbye to her beloved shiny Mawile, the mystery man recharges our transponder, and Lilith asks if there's any way to figure out how to get to Team Kronos' base. And he says as long as we look back in the logs at the first place it ever transported to, we should be able to find it. And we decide to head home. Apparently we've been gone for 2 days. Lilith immediately leaves the room mourning the loss of her partner, and Basil wants us to leave to try to comfort her, and Basil will fill Looker in on what's been going on. We find Lilith back over on Route 25 near Bill's house, where she's mourning the loss of her best friend. She knows that it was necessary for us to get what we needed, but it's sad to see friends go. But she tells us not to worry and we should head back to prepare for the final mission. Back over at headquarters, Looker congratulates us on being the best members of D-Squad, but I'm also pretty sure we're the only members of D-Squad, and we're embarking on what he hopes is our final mission. And now it's finally time for us to take the fight to Team Kronos and to come back alive. And with that simple instruction, we activate our transporter once again. And we find ourselves in a building. Basil says it looks like some kind of headquarters. And with that kind of thinking, that's how he got to be the third best member of D-Squad. He then suggests that we split up to cover as much ground as possible. And Lilith, whose mind appears to be somewhere else for some reason I can't imagine why, reluctantly agrees and we split up. While exploring the Team Kronos base, we eventually find David's room. And after he apologizes for the mess, he says he's not surprised that we were able to find our way here. And while he was hoping we would have brought some more reinforcements because it would have been a lot more fun for him, he's happy that we're finally here. And he can take us on at full power. David starts off with the Torterra, and we're gonna send in Charizard. On the first turn, we're gonna go for a Dragon Dance in case he was gonna try to go for an Earthquake, and he decides to set up a Stealth Rock. On the following turn, we're gonna go for one more Dragon Dance, getting up to +2 as he goes for a Wood Hammer, which we quad resist. We're now gonna Mega Evolve and go for a Flare Blitz, even though that means lowering our own health, but we know we can take this thing down in one shot. Out next is gonna come Tyrantrum, who now that we can outspeed, we can go for a Dragon Claw, taking down in just one. Next in comes Dragapult, and same thing here, at a +2, we are more than fast enough to take it down. When Typhlosion comes in, we're gonna go for a Dragon Claw again, KOing it. And once Lucario comes in, we're gonna go for a Flare Blitz again, getting the Yoko. Now down to just 40 HP, his final Pokemon comes in, and it's a Tyranitar. David's immediately going to Mega Evolve his Tyranitar, and we're going to go for another Dragon Claw, doing about 2/3 before we get KO'd by an Earthquake. We're then going to send an Annihilate, who's going to outspeed and go for an ice punch because I hit the wrong move, and he's going to go for a fire punch on us, barely doing anything. David's then going to use a full restore as we go for a close combat where we can grab the Yoko and defeat David once and for all. And after our battle, David's glad that he found somebody who's a more powerful trainer than him and wishes us good luck in taking down Spectra. But he does warn us that his master is virtually invincible. He then gives us one final warning. Watch out for the trainers representing the 7 colors. We then enter Goliath's room after that, and he applauds our efforts for getting this far and being with them every step of the way. But this time, he's going all out, and he won't lose again. Goliath starts off by sending in Charizard, and we're going to do the same. We're going to Mega Evolve on the first turn and try to do what we always do and go for a couple of Dragon Dances. As he goes for a Dragon Pulse, totally calling it. But after we can go for a Dragon Dance, we can now outspeed him and take him down in one hit. Up next is going to come Crocodile, and hopefully a +1 is all we need, and luckily it is, as an Aggron comes in next. Not sure if a Flare Blitz will Oko, we go for it, getting him down super low, where luckily he misses his next attack and heals up with a full restore. So I'm going to go for a Dragon Claw, doing barely any damage. But I do know it should be enough to take him down with another Flare Blitz, and we do, but I also KO myself. We're going to send in Annihilate next, and he's going to send in Aegislash. The Aegislash goes for a King Shield, which honestly I probably should have figured he was going to do, and unfortunately our attack goes down. So we're going to swap out, sending in Snorlax, and I assume he's going to go for a Ghost move, but he instead sets up a Toxic. Aegislash then goes for another King Shield, which of course he did, so when we go to Crunch, we don't do anything to him. But once he goes into attack form and goes for a Gyro Ball, we're going to go for a Crunch, and with his lower defenses, we do a massive amount of damage. Knowing Goliath's going to fully restore on the following turn, we go for another Crunch, getting him down super low. He's then going to pivot, sending in Corviknight, and I'm going to pivot, sending in Venusaur. So assuming a Brave Bird, we're going to swap out, this time sending in Pikachu, as he does indeed go for that Brave Bird, doing about 60%. Lucky for me, Static paralyzed him so we can outspeed with a Thunderbolt, grabbing the KO. In next comes Aegislash again, and it doesn't even bother going for a King Shield as we can take it down. And this means he's down to his final Pokemon, a Gengar. The Gengar is then going to Mega Evolve, go for a Shadow Ball, and KO Pikachu. So we're going to go ahead and send in Snorlax, as he goes for a Sludge Wave and unfortunately KOs us. So, in next comes Blastoise. The Gengar goes for a Shadow Ball, doing just about 50%, and we go for a Dark Pulse, getting him down pretty low, only for him to shoot off another Shadow Ball that we barely hold on to, and after one more Dark Pulse, we take him down, defeating Goliath. Goliath is taking his defeat a lot worse than his brother did. He then curses out me, Spectra, and his brother, and tells us if we want to face off against Spectra, we can go right ahead and lose, and he activates the teleporter for us. After going through the final teleporter, we find ourselves before Spectra, and another Ultra Wormhole. Spectra then educates us on the ancient War of Kalos, and of a king who possessed immense technological knowledge for his time. He created the ultimate weapon, put an end to the war. But the energy source for this weapon were Pokemon's life energy, and there are versions of this energy throughout the multiverse. Spectra calls it Infinity Energy, but in some form it's located everywhere, from Pokeballs to communication systems. And the residual energy from this weapon leaked into all other surrounding dimensions. At one point in time, Spectra went back to Kalos and tried to capture the Pokemon that produced this energy, but he was already too late in that dimension. But every other dimension that he's visited, for every legendary Pokemon that he's captured, he's had to defeat someone just like us, and none of them have prevailed. But Spectra's ultimate goal, his one desire, is to return home to his dimension. But in his dimension, there are no Pokemon. But with the multiverse opened up, he knows that a reality without Pokemon would be vulnerable. So these legendary Pokemon that he's collecting, he plans to use to defend his dimension. And that brings us to this wormhole. He plans on taking it to Kalos to capture Yveltal, the Pokemon of destruction. And with its power, he plans on destroying every other dimension throughout the entirety of the multiverse until he can go home. Only then will his dimension truly be safe. And before disappearing through the wormhole, he warns us, if we plan on trying to stop him, he'll do to us what he's done to every other hero who's crossed his path. And after going through the wormhole, we find ourselves in Genesis Town. And after making our way through Team Flare's base, we find Lysander and Yveltal. Lysander turns to us, and I'm pretty sure Callum or Serena's supposed to be here, but instead it's Red and these two dinguses. Lysander then asks if it was Sycamore or Diantha that sent us to stop him. And this is when we collectively realize that this guy has no idea what Spectra is, and he plans on just destroying this specific world by himself with Yveltal. But before he can do that, I guess he's gonna get rid of us. Lysander starts off by sending in Mienshao, and we're gonna send in Charizard. Knowing I need to keep my flying type for when we're stacking up against this thing, the Mienshao goes for a Swords Dance, and I'm gonna go for a Dragon Dance. Now hoping a +1 is all I need, because honestly, since it goes for a Swords Dance, I'm super afraid of this thing. We're gonna go for a Dragon Claw and grab the KO. Next up is gonna come Honchkrow, and we're gonna do the same thing, going for another Dragon Claw, KOing it in 1. Once Pyroar comes in, we can go ahead and sweep the floor with this thing, which is gonna lead into his final Pokemon, Gyarados. And apparently not even in this fan game can you give Lysander a full team of 6. The Gyarados is going to go ahead and Mega Evolve, and we're going to go for a Dragon Claw, but now that we're back down to +0, we don't grab the Oko. But fortunately, we survive an Earthquake, so we can go for one more, KOing his final Pokemon. While Lysander is contemplating how he could possibly lose with a team of only 4 Pokemon, Lilith notes that she recognizes this machine and that we have to destroy it. And just before Lysander can command Yveltal to activate the machine, someone tells him to stop. And then out of nowhere, Spectra appears before Yveltal. Spectra introduces himself as a leader of Team Kronos and lets Lysander know that he's not here to stand in his way. But he is here to steal Yveltal. Then he immediately transports the Pokemon to a different dimension. And after Lysander refuses to admit defeat, Spectra unleashes Yveltal and commands it to use Oblivion Wing. And with a flash of darkness, Lysander is no more. Spectra then commands Yveltal to attack Basil, who manages to dodge at the last moment. And before he gets the chance to strike Lilith, we step forward, and he commands the Anomaly to heal our Pokemon. And what exactly does he mean by that? And this will be the battle to decide the fate of not only our universe, but every universe. Spectra starts off by sending in Darkrai, and we're going to send in Charizard. We're going to Mega Evolve Charizard on the first turn. We're going to Mega Evolve Charizard right away, and Darkrai's Dark Pulse is going to do about 50% as we go for our first Dragon Dance. I know it's a long shot, but we're going to go for a Flare Blitz, and luckily we can take down the Darkrai. Next up is going to come Giratina, and going for a super effective Dragon Claw, it's more than enough to take it down, which is going to lead into Eternatus. And unfortunately, this thing's going to outspeed us, and a Sludge Bomb is going to KO Charizard. So we're going to go ahead and send in Blastoise. As it goes for another Sludge Bomb, doing about 60%, we go for an Ice Beam, only doing about a third. He's then going to pivot into Yveltal, and I'm also going to pivot, sending in Venusaur. Yveltal goes for an Oblivion Wing, doing about 60% to us. And we're going to go for a Leech Seed, but unfortunately I miss. So we're going to swap out again, this time sending in Snorlax as Yveltal goes for another Oblivion Wing. We're then going to go for a Rock Slide with Snorlax, doing about 40%. He's then going to withdraw, sending Eternatus back in, and we're going to go for a Rock Slide, but we miss. And I really cannot afford to miss right now. Eternatus then goes for a Sludge Bomb, and we're going to go for an Earthquake, scoring a pretty massive hit. Spectra is then going to heal the Eternatus up with a full restore, and we go for another Earthquake, doing about 60%. He's then going to swap out again, setting in Yveltal to avoid our Earthquake. Then firing off a Dark Pulse, we're knocked down to 27 HP, and unfortunately, we are flinched. Yveltal then goes for an Oblivion Wing, taking down Snorlax. In next is going to come Pikachu. And with our Light Ball, we outspeed it and KO Yveltal in one shot, which is going to lead back into Eternatus, where it outspeeds us, KOing us immediately with a Sludge Bomb. So we're going to send in Venusaur. And you know what, this isn't a Nuzlocke, so we're going to heal up with a full restore on Charizard, bringing him back to life. Because we are in a terrible spot here. I'm going to maintain my Fire typing as this thing goes for another Sludge Wave, and we're going to go for a Dragon Dance. After we heal up and take a couple more Sludge Bombs, but ultimately a couple of Sludge Waves are going to take us down again. So we're going to pivot, sending in Annihilate instead. A Sludge Wave's going to come in, doing about a third, and we're going to go for an Ice Punch, taking this thing down pretty low, and luckily we get the freeze off. It's still frozen on the following turn, so another Ice Punch takes it down. This is going to lead into Spectra's final Pokemon.
A Houndoom?
Spectra then Mega Evolves his Houndoom and goes for a Dark Pulse, taking us down to 39 HP, and we flinch. Sorry, buddy, my ape is not going out like this. I go for a full restore, and this thing goes for a Fire Blast, doing about 50%. I'm going to stay in, hoping I can stay up on just 8 HP. We deliver one more close combat, KOing ourselves and defeating Spectra. And once again, an evil team leader is surprised he couldn't beat me without a full team of Pokemon. But do we think that he's gonna lay down his plans just because we beat him in a Pokemon battle? In his world, Pokemon don't even exist. Oh damn, he called me. I only attacked you with 5 Pokemon. My ultimate ally's been here all along, so appear now and we can put an end to this futile fight. Of course his ace is a Hoopa.
We sent him Blastoise because he's our only Pokemon left.
I don't know if this is a supposed to lose thing, but I'm going to start reviving my Pokemon just in case as Blastoise goes down. Charizard's going to come in next, and I guess I'll Mega Evolve and go for a Dragon Dance and see if I can do some damage to this thing, as the Hoopa goes for a Thunderbolt, which we can now resist. So when we go for a Dragon Claw, we do a lot less than I thought we would as a Shadow Ball comes in, KOing us, and we are supposed to win. Okay. So I guess now we need to face off against this Hoopa. We're going to send in Charizard as it's going to quickly KO us. So we're going to send in Snorlax. It goes for a Hyperspace Hole, taking me down to about 30%, and a Crunch does an okay amount of damage, but ultimately we're going to go down on the following turn. We're going to send Pikachu in next, and I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to start reviving if there's any hope of me beating this thing, as it goes for a Focus Blast, KOing Pikachu as well. So in next is going to come Venusaur, where it goes for a Thunderbolt, doing barely anything to us, and I miss with a Leaf Seed. But I need to keep on trying as it goes for another Thunderbolt and gets the paralysis off. We managed to get the Leaf Seed in. On the following turn, it misses a Focus Blast, and we're going to go for a Giga Drain, which didn't do anything. But now we're healed up all the way to full. It attacks again with a Thunderbolt, and unfortunately we're paralyzed on the following turn. And once we get the Leech Seed off, I'm not exactly sure how much HP this Hoopa has been boosted by, but the amount of healing that I'm getting for every tick of Leech Seed is like redonkulous. So even though Giga Drain is literally doing no damage to it, I can just kind of ride this thing out as it Thunderbolts and Shadow Balls me. And eventually the Leech Seed does its thing and we take down this absolute monster of a Hoopa. But apparently even after we beat the Hoopa, it's still here? And that's where Lilith realizes that we seem to be in some kind of time loop? So we're just going to be perpetually fighting Hoopa forever. And that is when Hoopa transforms. And now we need to fight Hoopa Unbound, still with only 2 Pokemon. So everything I read said that you basically cannot Nuzlocke this game, and now I see why. So I guess I'm going to start reviving Pokemon because there's no way in heck I can survive, as Blastoise takes nearly 50% damage. On the first turn, we managed to get Annihilate and Snorlax up, and remove the paralysis from Venusaur, before Blastoise inevitably goes down. So now sending in our healthy Venusaur, I need to try to get a Leech Seed off on this thing again. The Hoopa goes for a Fire Punch, bringing me down pretty low, but we luckily get the Leech Seed off. So now I just need to try to ride this out as best I can. And honestly, just in case there's some kind of special hidden third form I'm not aware of, I'm going to keep on reviving different Pokemon here. So we're going to send in Charizard next. I'm going to Mega Evolve Charizard to boost its stats up, and luckily Hoopa misses as we go for a Dragon Dance. We're going to go for another Dragon Dance, getting up to +2 on our attack and speed as a Drain Punch comes in, doing a bit of damage to us, healing Hoopa up. Then going for a Dragon Claw, we do a pretty significant amount of damage to this thing, thankfully, but I'm pretty sure it's because its signature move lowers its defense every time. And with one more Dragon Claw, we take down Hoopa's second form, surprising everybody, including me, but especially Spectra. And since Spectra comes from a world where there are no Pokemon, he has the gall to grab us with his hands. And Spectra says if he's destined to disappear, that he's going to make sure I come with him. Saying that if his universe is going to lose their hero, then ours is going to lose ours, meaning me. And he plans to take us into the eternal void where we will drift away together forever. Lilith says that she won't allow that to happen. And just before Spectra takes us back through the portal, we hear a voice. The same voice that we heard at the beginning of the game. I found you at last, my dear. It's been a while, hasn't it? I hope everything went according to plan. and this mysterious person with long hair appears before Spectra, and the wormhole behind him starts to pull him in. He refers to her as the Scarlet Queen, and apparently this mission initially started as a way to unite all the universes, not destroy all but theirs. And with his failure, she casts him into the void. And after a very ominous speech, she turns around, revealing herself officially as the Scarlet Queen. And she looks an awful lot like Lilith. And that, everybody, is the end of Pokemon Reunion Chapter 1. This is a wildly different video than what I normally do on the channel, but I really hope that you all enjoyed it. And if you made it this far into the video and you're not subscribed, come on, what's the matter with you? Hit that button, maybe tickle that thumb, leave a comment. The only way that I'm going to keep on being able to make these videos is with all of your support. Can't do it without you, so please help me out where you can. But if you want to see me tackle Chapter 2, which is already out, let me know in the comments down below, and maybe we'll do another video Pokemon Reunion. And then when Chapter 3 comes out, I think towards the end of the year, we'll be able to tackle that one as well. This game is absolutely bonkers, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. But we'll be back, but I hope I can catch you on the next Pokemon video. See ya.